Oh my God, Anthony's beard.
Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I'm Ovs, I have Lecky with me. Veg is not with us because she's in South Africa.
Beans also wasn't able to make it today, but if you stick around, we will be sharing her predictions at the end of the episode, and they are worth the wait.
For now, you're stuck with me and Lecky, no offence, Lecky as always.
Apologies as always.
Lecky, how are you doing?
I'm ill, but other than that, I'm pretty good.
On brand.
Oh, happy belated Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you hear this.
Oh, I thought you were saying that to me.
Oh, well, also to you, but also to our listeners.
I was like, how lovely. Thank you, Lecky. The same to you. Yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day, sorry.
Happy Valentine's Day, listeners. I can go get fucked. I suppose that's the opposite, isn't it, of what it would have. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Obviously, we're here today for a very, very important purpose. Mm-hmm. We have found our purpose, unlike several characters on the show, because a tiny little thing called the Part 2 trailer hit us. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a little chat. Now, the way that we're going to do this is we'll be discussing the main trailer, the teaser trailer, the clip, and the stills that were released. Is that right, Lecky?
Okay, so no.
Ignore what I just said. Ignore everything I just said.
We're going to discuss the Part 2 trailer, the teaser trailer that was released when Part 1 dropped, the other teaser trailer, which is just like the bathtub scene.
Right. Oh my God, I was like, what have I missed?
It's just the bathtub scene. And then the sneak peek clip in the study, and it's like so dark and blue and you can barely see anything. That one. Mm-hmm. And the stills. Various stills.
What she said.
Yeah.
Hello, later Ovs just popping in here because just as we'd about finished putting this episode together, the show released a massive number of new stills from Part 2. Because of course they did. So when we said that we were going to try and cover all of the stills and all of the trailers and all of the clips, fools, we were fools. So if you're listening to the rest of this episode and you're thinking, why have they missed these really important details from the new stills? It was just too late. I'm sorry. We will do our best to kind of patch it in where we can, but please note that we have seen the new stills. We love the new stills. Thrilled to have Dankworth back. Matchmaker Colin, my heart is full. And most importantly, bearded Anthony. A beautiful couple of words there. So sorry for any glaring omissions, but we hope you enjoy the episode anyway. And we'll lock in a couple of final predictions for Part 2, because this is pretty much our last dispatch before we head straight on in, Lecky.
Yeah.
Crazy times. So, I didn't ask how you were. You fine? Oh, you're ill? You're okay? You didn't ask me how I was. That's okay. Standard part of the course. Let's crack on, everyone.
How are you? Sorry.
Sorry, I forgot we were in a conversation there, because not everyone abides by the rules. I'm all right. Thank you for asking, Lecky. Dassie's still teething. That's my dog.
Oh.
She's in a different phase of teething, though. She's stopped biting as much, which is miraculous, because I was in rough shape for a hot minute there. And by hot minute, I mean 3 months. But yeah, she's doing really well. She's getting really big and she's learning.
Oh.
She's very, very sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to more pressing matters. Let's jump into it, shall we, Lek? Mm-hmm. Before we go, I just want to say that we know that episode 5 spoilers are making their way around. We know that a couple of other spoilers are making their way around. There was a screening at, was it Netflix House in like Philadelphia or something?
Yeah, I think in Philadelphia.
I don't know. That kind of passed me by.
Well, you're not in Philadelphia, so.
I'm not in Philadelphia. Do you see how that happens? I'm in Northern England.
Yeah.
So we've seen bits and pieces, but we're going to make sure there are no spoilers in this. So spoiler free. And if you haven't read the book, we're going to try and keep it vague with book spoilers, aren't we? Mm-hmm. So we might be like, a plot point happens here.
Yeah.
Because we know that not everyone has read it. So to start with, Lek, let's just have like a general chat about the trailer. We're not going to go into the scenes or anything. We'll just chat about the characters and get a feeling for what might happen to them in Part 2 based on what it was. And then in the second half of the episode, we're going to do a bit more of a deep dive into trying to piece together a bit of a timeline for the rest of the episodes. Mm-hmm. And by we, I mean you. And I slept through the night and said, once again, I said, Lecky, wouldn't it be great if we had a timeline? And then I went, night, Lecky. And then I woke up and yeah, there was a beautiful timeline. We will get to that. Spoilers. Let's jump into the trailer. So this is the main trailer that we're going to share our general thoughts on. Lecky, how did you feel?
Oh, I was really excited for this one.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into like too many specifics, but when he says I found it and the expression on his face, like I could not be more excited for part 2 just based on that one scene. The yearning and the devastation. We love a sad Bridgerton man.
I'll sign up for any day.
And that scene delivers.
Yeah, you know that I've been a bit like, About part one. Obviously, I really liked it and everything, but I was really waiting for part two, I think. A lot of the story beats and the character moments that I've been after are in part two. And I loved the trailer.
Yeah.
I was like reeled straight back in. I was like, this is exactly everything I've been wanting.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Ben in a minute, but specifically for Ben, I was like, this is the challenge to his character that I've been wanting.
Yeah.
It's like to see those moments, I was like, oh, thank God. So I loved it. We asked our listeners over on Patreon what they thought about the trailer, and we had lots of thoughts pouring in. Worrying Poet kicked things off by saying, I'm so late to the party. I was expecting the trailer on the 14th and was completely taken by surprise to get it on the 13th. Lucky, we had a bit of a heads up on this one, did we not?
Yeah, there was some guy on Twitter who I guess he must be some sort of insider in the entertainment industry because he like posts when different trailers and stuff are going to drop in advance. So we were led to believe that the trailer was going to come on the 14th because I think it was like Netflix Spain had posted a little calendar, and on the 14th it said trailer. So we're like, okay, the trailer's coming on the 14th. But this guy on Twitter, he said that the trailer was coming on the 13th, and I was like, oh, okay. He also said that season 5 was Eloise. So he was right about it being the 13th.
And we didn't expect it to be on the 13th. We were like, it makes sense for it to be on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So maybe season 5 is Eloise. To be honest, I think we've thought all along that it would be Eloise, but I feel like that is very compelling. He got the other prediction right. Maybe his second prediction will also be right.
Prophet Twitter guy.
Yeah.
Hi, stand down.
Yeah.
So Worrying Poet, don't worry.
We were only tipped off by chance ourselves.
But there we go. And Murpham's mama said, the trailers this season are just gorgeous. Anna said, the trailer left me with my jaw on the floor. Oh, I love the rhyme, Anna. Part 2 looks pretty epic. I totally agree.
Left me with my jaw on the floor? How does that rhyme?
In my accent, it does.
Okay, I was going to say jaw on the floor.
I've been in the North for
does
a while.
Not rhyme in the American accent.
Jaw on the floor? No, in my Northern accent, which is stronger the longer I'm up north, jaw on the floor.
Okay. All right.
I sound like Alfie. Left me with my jaw on the floor.
Oh, I love his accent. I was watching that clip that Shondaland or Bridgerton Netflix posted on Instagram the other day where it was like a compilation of all his scenes and all his dialogue, and I just love him so much.
I don't have quite his accent. I have the accent next to his. So he has a Lancastrian accent, I have a Yorkshire accent. There's rivalry. It goes way back. You know, the War of the Roses, babe.
Yeah.
Long story. But jaw on the floor is actually how we'd say in Yorkshire. Moving on. Sorry, Anna. I don't know your accent. I don't know if it was a rhyme in your accent. But Rory said, is it just me or did this trailer barely give any of the plot away? Lecky, thoughts?
Yeah, so we can only really compare this to last season, but from what I remember, the season 3 part 2 trailer was very heavy on episode 5. So I think we're seeing a lot of episode 5 in the trailer and maybe not so much of like the later scenes because they're trying to kind of keep certain storylines under wraps. Like I think everybody knows John dies by this point, and like there's really not many clues in the trailer besides a teensy glimpse of Violet and Fran and Benedict wearing black in certain scenes. So I feel like they're trying to keep the lid on tight regarding like what happens later in part 2.
Yeah.
So I think these are mostly early moments and just a couple later ones.
Purple Cat said it was all a bit angsty, wasn't it? To be honest, the last 4 episodes usually are until the last 10 minutes when it all comes good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to the wave of the magic wand at the end?
Yeah, I do like a happy moment, but I will say I really love seeing their pursuit in a love story, and it seems like Benedict will be doing some pursuing, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
And that's what I'm really looking forward to, because it might be a bit hypocritical of me to be like, oh, I didn't really like the drama in season 3 part 2, but I'm looking forward to the drama in season 4 part 2. But they're different types of drama, because for me, I like the kind of drama where they're like fighting for each other. They're fighting external forces.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
I love that. Whereas, and you could almost say that that was like similar-ish to like season 2, where, I mean, they were fighting with each other as well, let's not lie. In a different way, like they weren't together. Whereas the drama in season 3 part 2 was very similar to season 1, where like they were married halfway through and then it was like married couple squabbling for 4 episodes and like pulling away from each other. And like that's the kind of drama that I'm not as in love with. I prefer it when they're like fighting to be together.
I think that's a really good point, because I feel like even I'm not looking forward to seeing John die just because I know I'm gonna like bawl like a baby. But even John's death will have an effect on Benophie's relationship, probably in pushing Benedict to be like, I need to be with Sophie. Life is short, life is fleeting.
Yeah.
I want to be with you. And perhaps vice versa from Sophie's perspective. perspective, but I think she will be fighting that a little more. So yeah, having those external factors kind of impacting the relationship, but kind of pushing them closer together.
Yeah.
That's always great.
And she said, oh my God, I need part 2 now, which signed me up. I was like, yes, on my screen this second, please. Okay, shall we have a chat about some of our favourite characters then? As I say, we're not breaking the scenes down. We're just sort of going on general impressions based on what we saw. To begin with, of course, we have to start with the lovers of the season, Benedict and Sophie. What were your feelings about the whole Benophie vibe that we got in the trailers?
Very much looking forward to this. I really love, like I said, seeing a man pursue his love.
Yeah.
And I love that he's going to have to fight for Sophie at this point and prove that he deserves her.
Yeah.
Not to say that, like, Benedict doesn't deserve her, but just prove that he is invested in her and not the fantasy of the lady in silver, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, he's dealing with many different issues. Like you say, for a start, on a personal note, he has to prove that he's moved on from the LAS and wants to be with Sophie as a person.
Right.
And then you have the fact that he has to, like, atone for his fuck up at the end of An Offer from a Gentleman. And then he also has to
challenge society.
Yeah, he has to prove to himself and to others that it's worth the risk. Well, not even a risk, because there's no risk. It's like, these are the consequences.
And that he's the man he's always claimed to be, because he always says, like, I'm not bound by the rules of society. Ever since season 1, he's kind of taken on that persona of, I live outside of society's rules. And now it's like, prove it.
And it's like a challenge to the very notion of what family means to them, because they're all right being like familia ante omnia, like family above all, but it's like, at what point is she your family? And do you start fighting for her? Like, do you wait until she's married in to start fighting for her? Or do you fight for the family you want to have as well as the family you already have? I think is sort of the question, especially comes in with Anthony, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Well, Purple Cat, our friend, said, my overarching thought watching this trailer was, yes, Benedict was Freya. Part 1 Benedict really annoyed me on my rewatches. I am here for that man to be completely broken. Bring it on. And I have to say, Purple Cat, I'm with you 100%. I am way more excited for Benedict's character in part 2. As I said earlier, I really, really wanted him to be challenged and to fight for something. And I felt like in part 1, even when he was with Sophie, like, he wasn't taking things super seriously. And he was approaching everything with that sort of laissez-faire attitude that he's always had. And I didn't connect with him in the way I would have wanted to connect with, like, a main character in a season.
Yeah.
And I felt frustrated by him.
He felt flighty a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm as flighty as anyone. So, you know, I don't blame you. But I just wanted a little bit more. And I wanted him to show up and fight for himself, not just Sophie. You know, you have to fight for the life that you actually want as well.
And also show us who you truly are.
Yeah.
Because he has a little bit of a mask on too.
And of course he had the, you know, part 1 regression of you have to start in this crappy point so that by the end you've had this beautiful arc.
Yeah.
But I was a bit frustrated by it. So the trailer, especially the new trailer, gave me like everything I'd been hoping to see, like those emotional outbursts, the pain when he's like sweeping things off of the desk in frustration. Because I think with Benedict, that has always been simmering. It's like, do you know those characters who have been like traumatized in life? Like, can you relate to this? Characters who've been traumatized in life and who cover everything up with like a very funny attitude and like a very like, I don't care about anything. And yet underneath they have like a lot of like anger that they just haven't really dealt with, or like pain that they've never really dealt with. And I think Luke Thompson has talked about the impact that like Edmund's death has had on Benedict.
Yeah.
And it's something that the show has never really addressed with any other character but Anthony, which I think is a shame, I'll have to say. But you can sort of see that there's something under there that he hasn't dealt with, that he covers up. So it's not that I don't think this character has no depth. We haven't seen it and explored it. And I really wanted to. And so every moment I just loved it. And like you say, who doesn't want to see a broken Bridgerton man?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've gone back and rewatched that little clip from the trailer. That scene, just his expression. Oh, chef's kiss. Love it.
Muffman's mama said, big kudos to the writers for giving us an emotionally charged Benedict. This is the yearning and frenetic vibe I needed in my life.
Yeah.
And she also said, what makes me so excited is the temptation Sophie will bring to the table. She denies his request, yet continues to be just out of reach in Bridgerton House. Sensational. I can see the threads being woven together as the book continues to come to life.
Yeah, I love this because he's still over there all the time.
Yeah.
Because he can't like stay away from her.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, to be honest.
And She commented, and when I saw this comment, I immediately burst out laughing, sent it to Lecky, and Lecky immediately burst out laughing.
Yeah.
She said, when Benedict tells Sophie, I found it, is he referring to the single Bridgerton brain cell?
Yes. No notes.
We have made a bit of progress because in terms of like the direction their story needs to go in the next few episodes, obviously we have to deal with the fallout of the offer. Mm-hmm. That is something that needs to be like wrapped up kind of quickly. We can't be like dealing with that in like episode 6 and 7 or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it feels like episode 5 will be consumed with that issue and like him proving, you know, almost in a way it's kind of a comparison to Colin in 208 and Colin in 301 where he like made a massive fuck up. And he had to quickly work to like redeem himself. And it's like that storyline can't take a whole season, like Colin atoning for the sin of saying that.
I think that's a good comparison.
But it still needs to be meaningful reconciliation. Like, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. This is how I actually feel. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what episode 5 will be preoccupied with. But then in terms of the trajectory for the rest of the episodes, you have, of course, well, Anna actually mentions this. Our listener Anna said, it's strange that there's no mention of the Lady in Silver. I wonder how that will be resolved in the show versus the book. And I thought the absence of the Lady in Silver was really interesting. And it's like almost the point because part 1 was consumed with his fascination and fixation on the Lady in Silver.
The fantasy.
Fantasy, yes.
And now we're getting into the reality.
Reality of loving Sophie.
Yeah.
And that is a very different story because the stakes are so different. Mm-hmm. And he has to reconcile that and she has to reconcile that. So like the fact that he wasn't mentioning the Lady in Silver is interesting because I'm interested in, has he genuinely moved on from her and completely is with Sophie? And there was that clip that you were talking about that was released where she comes across his drawings or paintings.
Yeah.
And she's like, who is that? And she doesn't really believe that he's moved past her. And also, what I love about that scene, their love triangle is so funny because she's almost like a little bit annoyed that he's like moved on from her. She's like, I'm jealous of the fact that you really loved her, even though it was me. And I'm also kind of a tiny bit annoyed that you've like moved on from her because she was me. So there's like layers there.
I have a comment before you move on.
Please, please, please.
It just occurred to me also that the theme of fantasy versus reality will be explored in the subplots also. So like that is actually really interesting. The reality perhaps of Penelope dealing with Lady Whistledown and the Queen Charlotte drama, which we hope will be picked up in part 2. There's even Eloise, the fantasy of I can stay outside of the marriage mart. So that'll be really interesting. Yeah. The somewhat complicated Fran relationship and the arrival of Michaela dealing with the reality of that. It'll be really interesting to dig into what the characters were fantasizing about, how they saw their lives in part 1 and how that changes in part 2.
Well, then you have Alice.
Fantasy of not wanting to be lady in waiting, becoming lady in waiting.
And then Violet and Marcus, because that was like a very light aspect of part 1 and very joyous. And it's like, what is the reality of them two being together?
That's interesting because I feel like the trailer doesn't touch on what the reality for them would be like besides them just canoodling everywhere.
I've got a whole paragraph on page 9 of 10 or whatever this is.
Really? They have like 3 scenes. Okay, we'll get there.
I have things to say.
Okay.
You know, as we can make a 3-hour conversation out of a little nugget. We've done it before. We'll do it again.
A t-shirt. Yeah.
So, as I say, first aspect of Benophie's story is like deal with the aftermath of the offer and prove that like you actually love her for her.
Right.
Then you have to like deal with like the issue of the Lady in Silver as a shadow over the relationship. But then I think a lot of the darker episodes will be, like you say, the reality of, okay, so you've got past Lady in Silver, you love this person, but loving this person will cost you everything.
Yep.
And like, how on earth do you navigate that love with the reality of the world you live in? Because it's all right living on the fringes of society with all your sort of like free dalliances and stuff. But the reality is there's a cost to that. And if you're going to stick to that and lay your chips all there.
Prove that you can live outside of society. Yeah.
Yeah, prove it. And then any of the plot developments that might happen to a person, who knows what could rock up. As we're saying, they've got a lot of challenges ahead, the two of them, and a lot of really intense moments shown in the trailer. There's 2 aspects of the trailer that I'm really interested in, because obviously we know about the offer, we know about the Lady in Silver, but the idea of them having to fight for the relationship within society is driven home massively in 2 conversations that we see take place in the trailer, and that is with Violet and with Anthony, because they have these really intense conversations where it seems like they're either against the relationship or they're just sort of laying down like, you need to be aware that this is a consequence. And it's not super, super clear, like whether they're like, do not do this, do not marry her because you'll ruin our family. Or if it's like, okay, you can do, but you need to be aware of what you're choosing.
Yes. If we're touching on Violet first, however, I feel like her clips in the trailer are misleading.
Okay.
I feel like what she's actually telling him in that scene is that he would have the support of the family. In the full trailer, Vi says to Ben, quote, your family? And then in the teaser trailer released when part 1 dropped, she also said in this scene, quote, we all will. And I feel like that's her saying, we will be with you. And there's actually like a scene in the book where Benedict actually goes to Violet and says like, I think it's even like hypothetically, like what would happen if I or somebody married a maid or someone of the servant class?
Just theoretically.
She basically reads between the lines, kind of like in 303.
Like Colin last year. Yeah. When he was like, theoretically, if someone was to fall in love with the best friend they'd known since they were children and she was 5'1" and ginger.
Yeah, and then her message is actually kind of similar. I think this is an adaptation of that particular book scene where she actually expresses her support and says, the family will be with you. Maybe it would take her some time to get to that point because I feel like this is like a moment in one of the later episodes, but I think that is her voicing her support for the relationship. I could be wrong.
Interesting, because some of the language she uses is, whatever you choose, you must live with it forever. There is one sacrifice you will have to make, your family. Do you think that's where it's spliced?
I'm not certain this one is spliced because the audio doesn't sound totally dissimilar to her other dialogue, but I think they could have edited this to twist the message. It could be from another scene, or it could be something as simple as her saying he'd have to sacrifice something else, like his social standing, because this conversation likely takes place before the issues about Sophie's status are kind of hand-waved away, as we like to say.
Listeners, if you want an example of how they splice audio, in the recent season 3 recap that they released, there was like this funny audio where Colin went, I cannot stop dreaming of Penelope.
Yeah.
And instantly we were like, well, that's not a line from the season.
Yeah.
And people were like, is it a cut scene? I was like, for a start, I can't take any more cut love confessions from Colin. I'm already scarred beyond belief by the dream sequence. But we like pieced it together. I was like, the I was from this scene and the cannot was from this scene and stop was from this scene.
Well, you went overboard, but like...
Oh, sorry. Let's have a look at your timeline later, shall we? And
we've been doing podcasting for a little while now.
3 years, guys.
And like sometimes we can hear some of the Spice dialogue because like they just don't sound the same.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't sound like it was obviously from a separate scene, but I definitely think it's edited in a way to mislead us into thinking the Bridgertons wouldn't support the match, or this is like an easy way for them to convey that message just by moving some of the audio around, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how do you feel Violet will approach it? Because obviously she is responsible for her daughters marrying well and everything. And that's always a concern, like your daughters will never be able to marry. Eloise is in the background, like suddenly all for it, like marry her if she ruins us, that's fine. But obviously she's also always taught them to pursue love and believe in love, hasn't she? Like love above all else.
Yep.
So do you think she'll be shocked at first and immediately on board? Do you think she will have the society thing in mind? Do you know where she's saying like, whatever you choose, you must live with it forever? Do you think she is still talking about the choice to leave society if he pursues a relationship with Sophie?
I don't really know. I just think that she gets to a point where she accepts it, but like she can either be really supportive, like she's so for love that it's difficult for me to imagine her like not supporting it, even if it's something that she didn't expect for one of her children.
Yeah.
But then again, in part 1, we have her pushing Eloise again back into the marriage mart after expressing in previous seasons that she realized that's something that Eloise didn't want, kind of ignoring her daughter's own wishes. So I don't really know. That's like a question mark for me, but I think she will eventually get there.
Yeah, and no book spoilers, but she does have a very pivotal role. And because she's had a pivotal role the whole season, she's been very involved with the Benedict side of things and very antagonistic in a way in part 1, I think you could agree with.
Right.
And so you are putting her in that position, if we're talking about characters going on journeys, if you're putting her in that position where she's so frustrated with Ben not marrying and she keeps being like, you need to marry, you need to find love, that's a challenge to her ideology, isn't it? Like, okay, you've believed this and you've espoused this for so long, but what about this curveball where your son has fallen in love with this person? Do you still stand by your ideology or do you get consumed by the concerns of society?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I can't really say how I think that's going to go. However, I do think it's interesting that we do see those scenes of her kind of bonding with Sophie and chatting with her in the trailer, wondering if something's bothering her when she tries to quit, for example, and then expressing to Mrs. Wilson that she thinks there may be something up with Sophie, that maybe she's like keeping something from them. So
that's a good point.
And in the official Bridgerton podcast, podcast, Ruth discussed the whole be my mistress offer by implying that Violet would think it would ruin Sophie, so her hesitancy could be out of concern for Sophie as well, until she at least realizes that Benedict is interested in marrying Sophie.
They've positioned Sophie to be held in high esteem with Violet.
Yeah.
But also Violet being a little bit like, oh.
Hesitant or maybe concerned at first. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that leads us on to a similar conversation, but with Anthony.
Yeah.
And our listener, Worrying Poet, said, my question, do we think Anthony is advising Ben against Sophie or he's in favour? I am mourning the loss of the fencing scene with Colin. Worrying Poet. You're not alone. I cry myself to sleep every night. And I'd love to be proven wrong, but it seems like Violet and Anthony will be the ones advising Ben, not Colin. But I can't tell if they're both against the match or whether that's just the way the trailer's been cut for maximum drama.
Hold that thought.
Lucky, Worrying Poet, you're one mind. And then Worrying Poet continued, if they do go with book spoiler, Violet in particular is very pro Sophie, especially at the end. Do we think they've changed that? Interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay. I do think that Anthony is going to be a con. I think Violet is eventually on the pro list. If you look at Benedict's expression, he does not look happy in the scene. And there's actually I was watching cuts from this scene in the trailer and then in the original teaser trailer they released. And he looks like very unhappy in both of those. So I think that Anthony is telling him what he doesn't want to hear. And there is a line in the teaser trailer where Benedict says, I cannot love a maid.
Yeah.
And I have no proof whatsoever, but I feel like this could be from this conversation with Benedict being so frustrated with Anthony's advice that he's kind of repeating the message that he's been told back to his brother, if that makes sense. And I'm a little bit frustrated by this as a viewer because you feel like happily married Anthony, you would feel like he'd maybe be more accepting of love and want his brother to pursue that. But he did say he was going to return to the season 1 Anthony.
Yeah.
And he's so into the rules of society and stuff like that. And also he might just be really pissed that Benedict has been drawing in his ledger for months on end.
That's what I thought.
They're made.
That's what I thought.
That he's not feeling particularly supportive in this moment.
Do you know, we talk a lot about him being in brother mode sometimes and dad mode sometimes.
Yeah.
Think about it, right? You've just been away for however long, no one knows. And you've just got off the boat.
Yeah.
A very long boat ride. It's choppy. It's the Regency, so I can't imagine it's super comfy. You've got at least one newborn.
Yeah.
And, Kate, you've got Kate, so there's one big plus there. But you get back, you get the carriage back to the ton, you think, I just want to lay down. Let's see what these clowns have done in my absence. And the first thing you do, go to your office, you open your little ledger book, and there's a fucking drawing of a maid in there. You're like,
multiple.
And then you turn the next page and the next page, and then there's a page of a woman in a mask, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
So we know he has a bit of a temper issue.
He's like, what about the frost in the fields? For fuck's sake, Benedict.
Did we invest in the copper mines or not? Yeah. So there is a part of Anthony, and I love him as a character, I really do, because he has had a lot of growth in the past few seasons, but there is that big brother in him that just gets annoyed. It's like the conversation with Colin all the way back in season 1, when he just explodes on them, and he almost needs to explode to get that anger out.
And it's also an interesting spin on the 305 scene where Anthony sits down with Colin and Benedict to discuss Colin's new engagement. Benedict in that scene kind of tempers Anthony and is like, you're not going to duel your own brother, and reminds him this is a happy situation, like Kate did earlier. But maybe because this is Benedict that has done it, he's like, even you have done something so foolish. Why do I have to tell you that this is something that can't happen?
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what Colin did was a bit hasty, but it was still Penelope, who in Anthony's mind was kind of harmless and made sense. It did signify.
Yeah.
I think what's a pity is obviously because we never saw Anthony's reaction to Whistledown. Who knows if he even knows?
I was going to say, maybe he just found out right before this scene also.
He's in a bad mood. It's I can assume that in a different timeline where Anthony had been a bigger part of season 3 and we'd seen the family reaction, that maybe he would have exploded at Colin and be like, oh my God, you've put the family at risk by marrying her.
Yeah.
But obviously we didn't get that. So it's a bit of an unfair burden that's put on Benophie's story instead. But our listener, G, said, I'm most curious about that Benedict Anthony conversation. Leave it in.
A new ship has sailed.
Benedict Anthony conversation. Will Anthony be supportive of Benophie, or will he have doubts initially?
Doubts.
I can't decide based on his line. I remember Jonathan Bailey saying we would see a bit of season 1 Anthony in season 4. Will that be in relation to Benophie? And you alluded to that as well, didn't you, Lecky? That this was a very long time ago, actually. Jonathan Bailey did an interview. We'll try and find the link. And he was talking about Anthony in season 4, and it was he's going to be a father. So that's sort of a journey for him. But there was an aspect where he was going to return to his season 1 character.
Right.
And when we heard that, we were like, okay, season 1 character was when he was in a bad mood all the time and he was shouting at his siblings and getting way too involved.
Sorry, I just had a really interesting thought because I was talking about that, I think it's Spliced, that line of dialogue where Benedict says, I cannot love a maid, and he sounds really frustrated. Maybe he's saying it to Anthony and pointing out, you loved a maid.
Yeah.
Why can't I?
Yeah. An opera singer.
Yes, sorry. But like throwing Anthony's own past back at him or saying like, you love someone outside of our rank. And Anthony was willing to give up everything to be with her too.
For his mistress.
Benedict knows that.
So I think we are getting that return. And I think for some people, it might be a little bit disappointing to see Anthony like come home and march straight into that duty mode, especially after all the growth you saw in season 3, where he was like a totally different character. He like didn't give a shit about anything really.
Yeah.
But I think story-wise, if you're looking at like why you need to have like an antagonist in the story, if you will, Benedict needs to have real stakes for the story to have the drama it needs. Like you need the friction to come from somewhere. If Anthony and Violet were fully supportive from the off, like, oh yeah, don't worry about society, yeah, we're fine, we can get over this scandal, go marry her, like that might do more justice to their characters and their perspectives. But for the story, we as an audience would struggle to understand the severity of Benedict's decision. I think you need those closest to him to be like, if you do this, this is how high the stakes are for your love. In some ways, it's unfortunate that that reality check has to come from someone like Anthony and Violet and at the expense of their softer sides. But it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
It can't be like this vague, like, ooh, society vaguely won't let me be with her. It's like, you need people to be like, this is the actual impact your decision will make.
Right.
And like you say, also, he's probably just really pissed off at all the doodles on his paperwork.
Yeah. And it also makes slightly more sense having this advice come from Anthony as opposed to Colin, who in the context of the show has shown us repeatedly that he would do even unconventional things for love, like marrying a gossip writer.
Yeah.
They'll probably redeem him at the end of the season also, like, because I think that they keep alluding to Anthony being kind of like Mr. Fix-It in like the cast interviews. So maybe he'll do something to help.
That's fine. Ultimately, though, if I can be honest with you, Lecky, he's got a beard. He can say anything he wants.
Yes.
Don't care. He's redeemed.
Veg especially is very pleased by that. Oh, in fact, we should insert her comments about the beard here.
Yeah. Veg, what do you have to say about Anthony in season 4?
Okay, guys, I can't be there for the recording, but I've just watched the trailer. I'm in the middle of a very busy day at work. I can't even speak. I'm 4 coffees down. Is my echo on? Okay, sorry, my echo feature was on. I'm having a great time. I think it's going to be a good part 2. I'm really finding it hard to form words right now. It's been a very stressful day at work, but I wanted to give my live reaction because I'm obsessed with Anthony. Literally, I said to the others, like, he is the representation of any last dregs of heterosexuality I have left in my body. The beard, the little ears poking out behind his hair. Obsessed. Anthony's back. We love. He gives a supportive speech or a not supportive speech. Who knows? Is he supportive? Is Violet supportive? I don't have enough brain power to work out if they were talking in a good way or a bad way. But they both have opinions. Colin has an opinion. His sounds pretty good. We got a preview of the love speech. Love that. And yeah, sacrifice family. Is she supportive? I don't know. What I did like was Benedict at the end when he looked frantic. We love a Bridgerton boy looking frantic, going after his girl. Also, I liked when he said, "No, I found it. I found it. I found it." It made me laugh the way he said it. I found it. Take care, Anthony and his beard.
Do you think there's a possibility of Kate talking Anthony down?
Hopefully. It seems like that's something that she knows how to do. You know what? She could just boop him on the nose like she does at the Polin wedding. Like, boop, you're so silly. He can marry a maid.
Yeah.
And then they'll be all set.
I'd love that. I'd pay many, many subscriptions to see that. So we've had a lot of talks about, you know, the general energy from Benedict, the sort of anger and frustration that we see throughout the trailer. But one key moment really, really got people talking.
Yes.
And it's the moment that Benedict loses his shit in front of Francesca. He shouts, "I have had quite enough of society," and I love the delivery of that line. And if you look behind him, you have a slightly blurry, but crucially dressed in black Francesca. Also, Benedict has like dark touches to his costume. He's a little bit, you can't fully see his costume, but it definitely looks like he's wearing black as well. This, of course, has led to a lot of speculation that this scene is taking place after John's death. And a lot of people have a lot of feelings about the idea that Ben will have this really explosive seemingly self-centered moment in this scene where like Fran is possibly grieving. So I just want to talk about that for a moment.
Okay, so Benedict is losing his shit in front of Francesca. If you look behind them, they're in Fran's home.
Oh.
And the curtains on the top, it looks like they've added like black draping that wasn't there before on the very top, if you look closely.
What does that remind you of, the black draping, Lecky?
The behind the scenes we got of outside Ranger's house where they added the black fabric to the gate.
Like black ribbon to the gates.
So a lot of people are thinking this is about Sophie, and I don't think it is, because this is in Fran's home. Fran's behind him. It's after John's death. I think this is a Fran situation that he's really upset about.
Can I bring some comments in just to sort of see what people are thinking and wondering? So Pink Bunny said, I have to say that one-shot clip of Benedict going off about society while Fran is wearing her mourning attire. My guy best not be feeling bad for himself when Fran's whole husband is dead.
Whole husband.
I'm not sure I have high hopes for him. Liz said, at some point in part 2, Benedict shouts at Fran while she's in mourning clothes. I think he shouts near Fran while she's in mourning clothes.
Right.
Which seems odd if John is the one who dies. Canadian Jones said, Ben, honey, sweetie, whinging about society while your sister is behind you in mourning clothes. Read the room. But, Lecky, we have a lot of worry, a lot of fear for Benedict's character.
Yeah.
What do you think about this moment? Because it's a moment from the scene that I really loved, and like I actually really related to it. And we're going to talk about grief and the nature of grief a little bit later when we talk about Fran and John. But what do you think is maybe happening in the scene? Because it could be that he's like, we're in the middle of mourning, but let me just get really annoyed about society. Or do you think there's maybe something more complex to it?
I think it's more complicated. I think that Sophie is a part of that he's so frustrated by the situation of being unable to be with the woman he loves that plays a small part. But they're in Fran's home. Fran's standing behind him. He's obviously not talking to Fran, but to somebody else in the room, expressing his frustration about whatever situation they found themselves in. And I feel like the fact that they're in Fran's home and it's after John's death is like really relevant. And I feel like this is misleading that Ben is upset about something to do with Fran. And if I had to guess, considering she's a widow without an heir, I think there may be some mention of her losing the title and being thrown out of her home, which I think is set up at the end of part 1 and the beginning of part 2, because we think that, well, first of all, at the end of part 1, we see the Penwoods moving next door to the Bridgertons. I'm sure that's going to be explained in part 2 because Lord Penwood is kind of like in season 2 where Jack Featherington comes in and there's like some fear that they'll be kicked out. I think there will be some fear that Fran will kind of be kicked out of her own home and like the family estates and stuff like that. Or if they want to get really dark, I feel like they may have her check to see if she's pregnant, to see if she can stay within her own home.
I mean, that comes from her book in a way, doesn't it?
See, I haven't read that, so I don't even know if that happens in her book.
Oh, no, you haven't.
But I was thinking, like, what would have Benedict so upset for Fran that he would have an outburst like that? Her having to deal with her husband's death and then having to deal with, like, the violation of potentially being checked to see if she has the heir, to see if she can stay within her own home, might be something that causes him to, like, go off.
He started talking about having a family.
Yeah. And then just one other thing, just to tie into this. He makes this remark about the demands of society. There's another moment in the trailer where he's chatting with Sophie in a garden and she says, what is love in the face of society? And I feel like that's another moment where he's trying to appeal to her to like be with him. And she tells him basically, it's never going to work. Society dictates that we have to be apart. We live in two separate worlds. And I feel like that is feeding into this scene where he brings up society again.
And it's one of those things where obviously part of his anger is about the rules of society. Like it's constraining him in all these different ways.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely underlying that emotion, that outburst. But I think especially the way he's positioned on the screen, he's standing in front of Fran in, I don't know, almost like a defensive, not defensive posture, but like a protective posture. And I agree that even if it's not something as specific as like, oh, Fran has to move out or like who's going to be the heir now or whatever, even if it's just a case of like the society they live in is like governed by all these customs and all these rules and all these roles, and it's so performative and like you have to spend all day performing the right way and doing this, and like grief is such like a personal devastating thing, and to have something so personal, you know, like what's his face from Walter Dundas, you know, if he's there like, well, we need to start thinking about, you know, what's going to happen to the earldom, or even if they're like, well, you know, we have to have this kind of funeral, or we have to do this, like we have to conform to grieving in this way, and he's like, fuck all of this, because Fran might be grieving in such a different way because she's quiet, isn't she? When we first watched it, I was like, is this John's death? She's not like crying and unconsolable, but then I was thinking about Fran, I was like, I don't know that she's a character who would deal with it in that way, like maybe in the initial shock, but like in the aftermath, would she just sort of retreat inwards to herself?
That's a good point. I feel like this is after John's death, maybe even after the funeral. Some time may even have passed is what I think.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's also possible, like you say, that it may not be even something as terrible as her being threatened to be thrown out of her own home or maybe even check to see if she has an heir. It could even be Violet, like, doing something as simple as, like, reminding Fran of what is expected of her as a widow. Like, you're going to have to wear this for the next 6 months to a year. You can no longer have collars.
Yeah, you're not allowed to go to these functions.
It could even be something as simple as that, where she's kind of like educating her daughter based on her own personal experience about what to expect going forward.
Yeah, and he's like, fuck all of this.
Yeah.
And I really like that as a moment for him. Lecky, you were talking a little bit about the Penwoods, which I thought was really interesting of you to pick up, because obviously the real cliffhanger of part 1 was the fact that the Penwoods have moved over to Grosvenor Square. And slight book spoilers, not necessarily book spoilers, but, you know, plot points from the book. Why would the Penwoods need to move, do we think?
So she is a widow and she doesn't have an heir. So that means the title has passed on to the closest male relative, and that is the new Lord Penwood, who may have reclaimed his, you know, estate or his home in the city, requiring them to move somewhere else.
As you said, like when Jack turned up in season 2, it was like foreshadowed at the end of season 1, like they passed the note and was like, the new Lord Featherington. Jack turned up and he like took over Portia's quarters, didn't he? But he allowed the family to keep living with him.
Yeah.
But he could have easily have gone, we'll kick you out. And that's something that they were really dealing with. They're like, we might have to go to Cornwall. We have to be nice to him.
Yeah.
It could be that, as you say, they have moved out. We saw that they've moved out and across the road. So the return of a Lord Penwood. There's someone else who might be returning. Dear friends, if you listen to our recent episode, you will know about this. If you're a reader of British Vogue, you also might know about this. Our listener Pink Bunny said, my initial thoughts, where's Miss Cressida? Well, Lecky. I'll say if you squint, she's there.
Yeah.
We'll get to the exact point. You can see her. Pink Bunny, she is in the trailer. She is the faintest little blonde pink blur. She's there.
Big sleeves.
On the topic of Cressida's return, as we say, John Glazer, the costume designer, revealed her return in an interview with British Vogue. And he was basically asked, who do you most look forward to dressing? And he said, well, Cressida returns. That article got edited to take out Cressida's name, but it was very obvious that it was Cressida. And you can actually see her in the trailer. So I'm actually really glad that John Glazer announced that Cressida was returning, because it saved us so many hours of like squinting at her and being like, is that Cressida?
Yeah.
Is that not Cressida? Like, I have other things I have to do that isn't that task. So I'm really glad we know that for sure.
Yeah.
So she is there. Now listener Rachel said, Cressida's return fascinates me. When, how and why does she return? And what does this mean for Penelope, Lady Whistledown? Cressida is going to be angry. And Liz said, from the stills people have captured, it looks like Cressida is at a ball, possibly hosting it. But John might be there too. So what timeline do we think this is in? Because John hasn't died yet, so it must be earlier in part 2.
Yeah.
What's going on? What do you think about her return, Lecky?
I think that she throws a ball to celebrate her return to the Ton as the new Lady Penwood. If you look closely in the trailer, first of all, it's an all pink ball, very Cressida. A lot of the guests are emulating her style by wearing not only pink attire, but some of them have very big sleeves. She is the woman with the biggest sleeves at the ball.
Oh, of course.
And she has a V-neck that's very reminiscent of the dress that she wears in 306, which is very interesting when you consider that Penelope perhaps publishes her retirement issue at the ball, kind of another parallel to 306. Really, really interesting. If you look closely, Polin are in attendance, Fran are in attendance, so we think this is maybe one of the last balls he attends before he dies.
Imagine it being a Cressida ball, eh?
And the reason that kind of supports that Cressida is the new Lady Penwood is you see the Penwoods enter the ball, so obviously they're not hosting it, but if you look closely in the teaser trailer, the footmen are wearing the Penwood livery, and you can see them prepping for the ball and even stacking pink champagne glasses and stuff like that, and you can see their livery. So obviously this is a Penwood ball.
I would love this ball. I
You
love
would.
pink, as you know.
Yeah.
Also, I think in the tiny glimpse you can see of Cressida, you can see her like standing really closely next to a man, and it's like, is that the Lord Penwood? Where did they meet? Did they meet in Wales?
I don't really know.
And I bet there's no explanation, and I really want an explanation. I want like a little side plot of them hooking up together. together.
How they got together. I also like in the trailer, you see Cressida moving toward the middle of the ballroom right before they cut to the Penwoods entering. And I feel like that was them kind of positioning Jess Madsen, like in terms of the blocking to like greet the Penwoods when they arrive. Because like there's something really interesting about the former Lady Penwood having to greet the woman who's like supplanted her.
Yeah. What an interesting little turn, isn't it? Because we wondered for a long time if Jess Madsen was going to return in season 4 specifically. We really hoped we'd see more of her. We thought season 3 Cressida was brilliant and she handled her so well, and there's so much room for another story there. We wondered if maybe she wouldn't be a part of season 4 and would maybe come back for Eloise's season, considering the relationship they had in season 3.
Yeah.
However, it started to become a little bit more apparent that Cressida might return, and then of course John Glazer confirmed that.
I have some reservations about it, to be honest.
Me too, but I think it makes sense in terms of supporting your theory that she's going to be the new Lady Penwood.
Yeah.
And again, that return means that's why Araminta's had to move out. Right? Because Cressida ain't going to live with them. Are you joking me? She's like redecorating bright pink as we speak.
Yes.
Like Colin was there with his blue paint. She's there with the pink paint.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if Cressida is going to arrive back in the Ton in part 2, when shit actually needs to like start really ramping up and happening, then it's Benophie season of all seasons. So it must mean that she has an actual connection to the main plot. Otherwise it'd be like, why are we just randomly introducing like a different Cressida subplot this late on?
Right.
She has to have an actual relevance to the main plot. So her returning as Lady Penwood does make a lot of sense to come back and be a part of the story.
It makes sense for the plot,
Well,
but I hate it.
Me too.
I hate it. I really wanted her to be redeemed. They did something really interesting with her character in season 3 and humanizing her and showing that she wasn't a person that was just completely evil and that she had the capacity to be redeemed. And she kind of fell away from that at the end. But I was really hoping that we would get back there. She would even have her own love story, maybe with Debling, maybe with somebody else.
Just anyone.
But I don't know.
The Modiste in Vienna. I have the exact same thoughts. I mean, for a start, I'm so glad she's back. I love her as a character, but I really don't want her to come back as a flat out villain.
Yeah.
That's not compelling to me to be like, oh, another villain entering the Ton. I think season 3, as we said, did such a great job in developing her character and like really letting us empathize with her and hope for her.
Yeah.
I wanted her to have everything else everyone else has. I wanted her to find love and find happiness. Maybe she does really love Lord Penwood. I don't know. Who knows? I really wanted her redemption. Is it still possible for her to be? I mean, it's not a crime to marry someone and move into their home. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a villainous act to get married and be the Lady Penwood.
Yeah.
But I worry that I don't know, there's a lot of thoughts about Sophie's lineage and the way that Araminta has treated Sophie in her life and really isolated her and made her miserable, and she's taken her true lineage away from her with the will, because we know that the original Lord Penwood supported Sophie and wanted to provide for her after death. Is it possible that Cressida could have that compassion within her, that because Araminta is such I wouldn't say she's a one-note villain, because that does Katie Lung such a disservice. Katie is a brilliant actress and brilliantly portraying the character. She herself has said, we will understand Araminta, but she might not be redeemed. So would it be better if someone like Cressida came in who had also a bit of a villainous past, but had this redemption where she helped restore Sophie's, like maybe she recognises her as a Penwood. I don't know. I want more for her character.
That's what I was thinking. I think that maybe she will help Violet kind of cement Sophie's reputation, like reestablish Sophie's reputation when it's discovered that she is the daughter of a nobleman, and make it possible for Benophie to marry and still be in society, because in the trailer we see them dancing together in society, but we'll get back there.
Yeah.
That would be something that potentially would redeem Cressida if she like backs Violet up and she recognizes Sophie as a Penwood.
Yeah. Because ultimately it's no skin off of Cressida's nose to do that, because the talks of lineage, even if, and I know this wouldn't happen in reality, Bridgerton lives in this own little bubble, even if Sophie is like legitimized as a daughter rather than like a bastard daughter, she would never inherit the earldom, right? So it's not like doing that would put Cressida's own position at risk.
In jeopardy.
Yeah, because it would still go to the nearest male relatives. That's that, isn't it? So I really hope that is the way they take Cressida, because I'm not really interested in her just returning and being like, oh, I'm a horrible woman again.
Yeah.
And of course you have the whistle down of it all. Like, how does she then interact with Pen? She's obviously invited Pen to the ball. things happen at that ball, potentially, with Whistledown. What is her standing with Eloise? Because I thought she might, if anything, come back in season 5 when it's Eloise's season. Or will they just not really touch on those aspects? Do you know, the way that the show sometimes does, where like it just sort of skips things over?
I don't know about Eloise, but I definitely think that Cressida will have some sort of reaction to Pen releasing her column at her ball.
The look on Pen's face in that scene, she was like so self-satisfied.
Very smug, yeah.
It's one of those things, you know, you can forgive and forget, but the other person might not forgive and forget, so who knows? We'll come to Pen a little bit later because there is a far more pressing question, Lecky, that I have to ask you. Erin said, it looks like Posey gets a suitor and is dancing. Do you think it's an actual love interest or just a random guy?
Well, I think that's not this ball.
What ball is that then?
I think that's the Queen's ball.
A different ball, but nonetheless, on the topic of Penwords, Posey might get a suitor.
Yes, very pleased. Very pleased. I love love. Bring me all the love stories.
We want love for everyone. And from the behind the scenes picture that Katie Long shared, Rosamund has an engagement ring in another shot. So...
Right. And Sophie is wearing a ball gown. And if you look in the trailer, it looks like Sophie and Benedict are dancing in the background and she's wearing the same dress that she's wearing in the behind the scenes shot. So I think that's all from the Queen's Ball.
So it might be an all's well that ends well kind of situation.
Well, I feel like the fact that Rosamund has an engagement ring doesn't necessarily mean that she and Sophie are close now. It just means that, like, she ended up finding a husband. Maybe he's not a great husband. Who knows?
Talking about a great husband, have I got the man for you? It's our lovely Colin. Oh my God, the highlight of the trailer.
Yes?
Matchmaker Colin, nonetheless, Lecky.
Matchmaker Colin. Oh.
Returning in full force. Now, if anyone is out there worried that the show might not make it to season 8, don't worry. They're covering it here. He's basically in the tree as we speak. Because Colin is giving love advice. I love him so much, Lecky. I love him so much. You must be brave. You cannot let fear stop you from letting your heart speak.
Oh.
I was thinking that man is so clearly traumatized from the end of season 3, episode 3.
Yes, exactly.
Do you know where his mum was like, be brave? And he like walked onto the ball and he couldn't speak because he was so like frightened and startled. And he's like, I can never let that happen again from the human being because I just stood there for 5 minutes in silence.
And almost fucked it. Yeah.
I love that. It's such a Colin perspective to have. But though we have pressing questions because who exactly is Colin talking to? Late said, who is Colin giving advice to? I see Gregory. Is that Benedict sitting behind Gregory? It looks more like Cheeseman to me. I know Colin will be giving Benedict advice this season, but where is Benedict in that particular trailer? Well, Late Purple Cat had the answer for you because yes, it was indeed Cheeseman, was it not, Lecky?
Yes.
Purple Cat said, I am overjoyed to see Colin Finch. And there's another character that you might have missed. We've got Colin, we've got Greg, we've got Finch. Who else is in the scene, Lecky?
A table full of cheese.
Oh,
What a table full of cheese.
that man is living his best life, day in, day out.
Yes. And this is the answer to why Luke Newton kept bringing up eating cheese in all those interviews.
Just sounds like a thing he would do anyway, to be fair, you know.
Yeah.
What a great time he's having as well, just getting to eat cheese.
Yeah.
It's like the behind the scenes photo that was shared from episode 4 of Penn and Colin sat together on the sofa at Franz. And like you could see in full detail how
many biscuits he had on his plate. Ah, that man knows his character so well. I have many things to praise Luke Newton for in his acting, but like just the choice to have so many damn biscuits on a plate and hold hands with Penelope at the same time, even if they're in the blurry background, like perfection. My God, give them a raise, please.
let them eat cheese.
Yeah.
And also, Lon MacDonald, who plays Finch, has confirmed
Did he?
in the cutest little story, he like took a little screenshot of his blurry little fuzzy head.
Oh, I didn't see that. Cute.
And he was like, it's me.
We knew.
Oh my gosh. So yes, it is Colin giving love advice to Gregory, which is of course something that Luke Newton had confirmed himself. He was like, well, Colin is a bit full of himself and thinks that just because he knows love, he's got all the advice for everyone. And he advises Greg, who has a crush. On the topic of the advice itself, our listener Late said, I love the idea of Colin telling someone else, you must be brave. Oh. Thank God for Violet's advice last season. It worked so well that Colin is paying it forward.
Oh, so sweet.
And Erin said, oh my God, not Colin being Violet's #1 student. Of course he would remember her words about courage when it comes to love.
I have to defend him now because for years we thought he didn't hear Violet back in season 1 when she said, you must marry your dearest friend.
Mm-hmm. And we were like, I'm sorry about the videos we once made mocking you for not paying attention.
Yes. Yeah. So I have to commend him for being like a great listener and taking his mom's advice to heart.
Pink Bunny said, of course, I've got to love advice from Colin. My Polin heart craves a little heartfelt speech about how he also had to calm his fears of society to go for what he really wanted.
That's an interesting point.
I love it because the advice he's giving is so specific to himself, obviously, and then also to whatever situation Greg's got himself into. But he says, you must be brave, and bravery has been a recurring theme for Colin. It's something he learnt from Pen in season 2, and she said, I want to be brave and witty, and he admired that trait in her. And it's something that in 308, he was like, I can't believe a woman of such bravery loves me. And he's really been transformed by his love story and the person that he is with, that he has really taken it to heart. And it's a bit of a tradition for each season that the previous lead has like a moment of advice. And we'll come to it that this is slightly indirect advice. But what I love about this advice is it's still such like a Polin plot point from last season that's
tied in very cleverly. Yeah.
Love it. But Lecky, can we just have a chat? Because it's obviously to Gregory and to Finch and to the table of cheese.
Right. Yes.
Is someone else overhearing?
Luke Newton also in interviews said that he maybe indirectly gives Benedict some advice this season. So a lot of us, I think, are thinking that maybe he meaning Benedict, overhears this advice, or he's there in some capacity and hears this advice and kind of takes it to heart himself. Because I feel like the Benedict we see in part 1, he also, kind of like Colin, has his mask on, is not showing his real feelings and his own insecurities. And I feel like this is a point potentially in part 2 where he realizes that he needs to be real with Sophie and not just tell her that he finds her irresistible, that he's attracted to her on this like surface level, that he needs to tell her that the feelings run deep.
Yeah.
They had that conversation in the masquerade where she's like, will you not wade out deeper with me? I feel like he has to do that with her at some point in part 2 and show her the depth of his emotion in order to finally get somewhere with her.
And the idea that it does take bravery to love someone. And that is pertinent to Benedict and Sophie, because it's not just like, oh, emotionally, I want to fall in love with you, or like, I want to be with you. It's like, I'm going to have to really make a statement if I'm with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an actual change to everything that he'll be doing. Our listeners agree with you about the idea that Ben might overhear this. Nick said, I love the look of the scene where Colin says to be brave and not let fear stop you. I assume that's in relation to Gregory's crush plotline, but I agree with others that Benedict may overhear this and take it on board. This may be what Luke Newton mentioned about Colin inadvertently giving advice to Ben. And CPB, our listener, said, I love we get Colin giving advice, but I have a suspicion the lines we hear are directed towards Gregory, but Benedict will take them to heart.
That's exactly what I think happens. Yeah.
And I really like that notion. It's a little bit like, do you know the scene where Pen is with baby Edmund and Violet and Benedict is watching them? I like the idea that he's having these very direct conversations with Violet and Anthony, and maybe they're difficult conversations. Maybe they're real challenges and real truths that you need to hear. But you also need to hear the other side of things. You need to hear, okay, these are the stakes in terms of what you're risking. But it's also like, actually, we need to see that you have a risk, but you have a reward, right?
Right.
So what is the reward of taking such a damaging risk? And it's like, love is everything to them. So he has this moment where he overhears Colin. He has that perspective that he really needs. Then you have that moment where he sees Penelope and his nephew and his mother all together in the same moment. And that's something that's still within his reach if he's brave enough to take that step. So I like having both.
So touching on that scene that you mentioned of him watching Penelope and Violet with one of the babies, Cantonese, if there is more than one baby. I can't say baby Edmund because I'm not sure that's baby Edmund. But if you look behind him, Lady Danbury's behind him. And in an interview, Adjoa said, there's a moment where Danbury catches Benedict looking at Colin and Penelope and the new baby. You don't see Colin in the trailer, but I'm just going to assume maybe he's out of frame or she misremembered, but hopefully he's there. But Adjoa continues by saying, he's not gone into the room. He's just standing there looking, and she sidles up to him and she says, you know, you are allowed this. This can be part of your world. You just have to hold out for what you want and then have the courage to ask for it. So I feel like she might be one of those people who give him positive advice, pushing him toward Sophie. And that maybe makes me think in retrospect that Violet might actually be kind of antagonistic and that Lady Danbury will be offering the alternate perspective, because you can't have everybody be for the relationship companionship. And I think Antony will be against it. Colin is indirectly pushing him towards Sophie, so maybe Lady Danbury does as well.
Yeah, and for Sophie as well, she already knows the real world consequences. She already has that in her mind. But then she also has those supportive voices in her life. Obviously, she has Alfie, who we saw in part 1 was supporting her. And we had the moment from Hazel in the trailer where she's like,
yes,
you know, there's more to life than just working. And you need those moments where people remind you what you're fighting for.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're just fighting and you want to give up. But you need those moments where people are like, go for it, do it. So I am really loving the idea that Colin indirectly encourages Benedict and has that little pivotal moment for him in some way. It's slightly sad in some ways because, as our listener G said, I am mourning the potential loss of the Ben Colin book fencing scene from the books, but I'll take what I can get. And if this indirectly influences Benedict, I will be happy about it.
Yeah.
And Canadian Jode said, I'm still hoping Colin will have some sort of encouraging conversation with Benedict. As the one person who would understand what it was like to be in love with someone who hasn't been entirely truthful about their identity. That is a very good point. It would seem like a wasted opportunity not to draw that parallel between them. Lecky, we kind of forgot to mention that in the Benophie section actually, but it's a very interesting point is, obviously, let's say, you know, they're together, great.
Yeah.
At what point, A, does he realise that she is the lady in silver? And B, how does he react to that? Like, is that pure jubilation? Like, oh my God, what an extra bonus. Or will there be a level of, say that revelation comes earlier in like, I don't know, episode 6 or episode 7 or something, and he finds out that she always knew she was the lady in silver. Is there a sense of betrayal in there? Or is that too similar to season 3?
Yeah, see, this is interesting because in the book, something happens to Sophie, and kind of like in season 3, I would prefer if he found out who she is after that, because it's more meaningful if Benedict fights for her, not knowing her identity after that plot point occurs, and then finds out afterward. But there's this scene in the trailer that makes me think that maybe they tied those two things together, because I think she's like leaving the Bridgerton house, and then you see this shot of Benedict running out of the Bridgerton house, and then like there's a shot of him like racing off on horseback. But when he's running out of the Bridgerton house, he's carrying something white, and earlier in the trailer it looks like she's burning her glove. So I don't think it's her glove unless he fished it out before it completely burned.
No, but he's got his glove though.
Oh, that's true. It could be his copy.
His copy.
his pair of the glove. He has a cloning machine.
Yeah.
But I always thought that he would find out her identity because of her necklace, because they make such a point of her taking it off at my cottage so that he doesn't see it when they're like alone together there. And then when she returns to the Ton, her maid uniform kind of covers it up, so I don't think he sees it.
Lecky, I don't have the answer now, but in all the drawings he's made of her, does she have the necklace on? Is it going to be one of those things where he's like looking at the drawings and he's like, wait a fucking second. I've seen that before.
Oh, I like that idea. Actually, hold on. I just photoshopped Alison Hammond into that picture, so I have it here somewhere. Okay, here it is.
There's a context to this somewhere, listeners, honestly.
Oh, 2 of the drawings have it, and then let me look at the painting.
Oh, I've got the painting of her, but she's like looking over her shoulder, so you can't see.
Oh, okay. In 2 of the drawings, they had it.
Yeah, I don't know. In some ways, it's great drama, so I think they might do it in terms of like, how dare you not tell me? In some ways, is that too similar to season 3 to be like, a secret identity you didn't tell me about, and I'm going to sit on the sofa and have a sad cup of tea over? Also, is there just like understanding in why she did it? If she says, I thought we'd never be together, I couldn't risk it, and everything that's happened since has shown me what a risk that was. And he's like, fair play.
Yeah.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for your advice, my dear. Lovely to see your face, as always. I have one more question for you about this scene, though, Lecky Merrick.
Okay.
Nick said, any ideas on who Gregory's crush might be? I'm wondering if it will be Posey or will it be some external off-screen person who we don't see. What do you ladies think?
I have no idea. I'm so sorry. But I feel like he's been away at Eton, so maybe it's somebody there. Could it be like a classmate? It could be like some like matron at Eton. Or maybe he meets somebody or sees somebody when he returns to the Ton, like Posey or another young debutante, and develops a crush on them. But honestly, I just don't know.
I did see the theory of Posey, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, I can kind of see that.
But then he'd be brokenhearted at the end of the season when she's dancing with somebody else.
It's part of love.
Oh.
Have you never been brokenhearted before, Lecky? It's what it is, isn't it?
I guess.
All the Bridgertons have to have their first little situationship, don't they, before their true love?
Also, in the books, I am going to share the spoiler, but Posey is kind of like taken in as a ward by the Bridgerton family, by Violet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So them living under the same roof and him having a crush on her, I don't know.
Slightly messy. It is the Regency. I thought that was quite cute though, because Posey is so funny and adorable. And I liked the idea of Gregory being like utterly enamoured by
her Luna love goodness.
Maybe it's Penelope. On the topic of Penelope, actually, sorry, Greg, you go deal with your crush. We have Penelope to talk about. Interestingly, though, like the trailer really didn't give much away when it came to Penelope. There were just sort of a few intense shots of her writing and like looking amazing.
Right.
I think there was a shot of her looking in the mirror.
Right.
But the key moment for Penelope was the whistle downs that were being handed out at the ball. The one where Penelope is next to Colin. She gives like a really, I wouldn't say smug because that's not quite the right characterization, but a very satisfied smile at how things are unfolding. You have a bit more information. You've dug into which ball this is happening. I think you teased it earlier. Which ball is it, do you think?
Cressida's ball. 306 parallels here. I think this will be episode 6 as well, maybe. Why not?
Oh, the best balls happen in episode 6.
Yeah. But I mean, if Cressida's returning in a dress that looks very similar to her 306 dress, and then there's going to be a ball where chaos ensues when an issue of Lady Whistledown is delivered, why not have it be the same episode is what I was thinking.
Yeah. Because Penda's like, you ruined the floral ball and that Dalek.
Yeah.
By bringing you fake stuff in. Let me bring the real material to the table. She said, is Pen announcing the Lady Whistledown retirement in that column we see distributed? She definitely looks pleased.
I think so.
And are we maybe getting a Polin dance?
Oh, I don't know if Polin will dance at this ball. I think they'll dance at the Queen's Ball.
So, Lecky, you keep mentioning a little Queen's Ball. Give me more information, please.
The Queen throws a ball. I think it'll be the final ball at the end of the season that Sophie and Benedict are allowed to actually attend together. Posey has a suitor. We see Colin pulling Pen away from Elle, and I feel like that's the moment we get to see them dance.
Payback for a lifetime of interruptions.
Yes. And the reason I'm pretty sure they dance is, I'm really, really sorry, listeners. I'm really, really sorry, but there's some Korean merch. There's like a...
We're going down that rabbit hole again. It's the tea all over again. It's the t-shirts all over again. It's the biscuits all over again. If you've been with us a long time, you're exhausted.
There is a bag, and on this Korean bag, there's 4 dancing couples. We have Benophie that are dancing in a gazebo, so I don't think they actually included Benophie dancing at this ball, but there's 3 couples dancing nearby. One of the couples, the lady has kind of like a high half updo, like Kate sometimes has, so I think that's Kate and Anthony. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing the other couple is Finch and Philippa, though it could easily potentially be Posey and a new suitor. But the third couple, it looks like Pen and Colin to me, and Pen, it looks like her hairstyle at the Queen's Ball, not Cressida's ball, because she has another half updo on the back of her head with like her curls and like ringlets, and it looks like that on the Korean merch bag. So I think that we'll get a Polin dance at the Queen's Ball. Sorry.
Theories brought to you by...
Korean merch. Yes.
It works, you know, the shoe fits. Oh God, I don't want to talk about shoes anymore. So, Lecky, we've carbon dated the ball, haven't we? But what is in that whistle down? Do you think it's going to be a retirement?
I do think so, because there's another shot in the trailer of her like staring into the mirror. And I think that's to kind of like fortify herself. And we know they love to use that mirror imagery with Penelope. And I can't think of a better night to do it than the night where she finally puts aside her alter ego. And I feel like we talked about this in part 1, where they kind of didn't really deal with the Queen Charlotte and Penelope drama. So I'm guessing that comes back in a big way in part 2. And at some point, Penelope is driven to retire as Lady Whistledown. But I think this is episode 6, so I think it happens like a lot earlier than I expected.
Because there was something in Penelope's expression that like I really recognised in, do you know, like when you're just ready to let something go? I don't know, I can just see like a resolution within her, but also like a strength to be like, I think she's decided to let go of Whistledown. I don't 100% know why. I mean, we can speculate that people taking from her energy all the time with visiting her and her seeing through that, it not being as rewarding now she's not the wallflower, the pressure that the Queen puts on her to just dance to whatever tune she wants to be played that day. It's hard because I want Pen to give up Whistledown because she feels creatively fulfilled and ready to move on to the next thing. That is for me what I want her journey to be like. I don't want her to be like forced into a position where she's like, I've just had it and I want gone with this thing that I spent my life building. Because if you think about it, there's something in her expression that is like calculated in the way she's done it. It's been done at Cressida's Ball, which obviously has its layers with their relationship. But I wonder if the Queen really doesn't want her to retire or isn't expecting her to retire and Pen just does it anyway. And she's like, fuck it.
Yeah, I think it's that. And this isn't going to play out like you want it to, where she reaches a place where she decides to retire. I feel like she's going to be kind of forced into it, because we were talking earlier about how part one is the fantasy of being in league with the Queen and being famous as Lady Whistledown, but also kind of realizing like, oh, this might actually be really hard to write gossip about people and be true to the self I promised I was going to be last season, that I'm not going to hurt people. And I feel like this is going to be the reality, the fallout, that Penelope realizes, actually, I can't do this. I can't be the Lady Whistledown that I was before, and this isn't something I can continue. Oh, also, just to revisit very quickly, the Queen's ball. The Queen at that ball, she has this heart-shaped wig. Hi, gang. I originally thought that this moment in the trailer was from the Queen's ball, and I was wrong, so enjoy my folly. But if you look closely, it's covered in butterflies. They're blue, gold, and silver. And I feel like butterflies resemble rebirth, right? So we have maybe the blue and the gold for Penelope, and maybe the silver for Sophie, the Lady in Silver, is what I was thinking. Aww. Because that's her kind of entrance into society.
That's cute.
I mean, that's pure speculation. Sorry.
So if you're speculating that this ball might take place in episode 6 then, and if Pen tires or like throws a retirement on people, which is similar to what happens in Romancing Mr. Bridgerton actually, there's a lot of space in the rest of the season for that notion to be challenged.
Drama.
It's all well and good telling people you're going to retire, but when people know who you are, if the Queen's like, actually, which is a funny parallel to like the Lady Danbury of it all, where Lady Danbury's like, I'm going to do this, and the Queen's like, I don't think you are. And the tension that creates.
And that also ties into the Lady Danbury Queen Charlotte drama, because in the trailer it looks like Queen Charlotte finally lets Lady Danbury go. So maybe that is also symbolic, the butterflies, symbolic of her letting Penelope go and be her own thing as well.
Turbulent times ahead for Pen, it seems. Obviously, I really want Pen to have a great storyline. It is kind of sad if like she's like
forced into it.
Feels a little bit, I don't know, I just want the end of a big thing like that to feel creatively fulfilled. But it's Bridgerton, so it's probably going to be drama. Of course, Polin, there was a couple of glimpses of them together. Our hopes for part 2 is just more of the same. Many more pinnacles, many more moments.
And hopefully Colin's in the frame. Please, Lord.
I mean, it didn't look good for that shot of Pen's face where you just see a bit of Colin.
Yeah, I know. I hope there'll be a shot of him like fully in frame and them together. But there was a behind the scenes photo they just released of that episode in...
Oh, we mentioned it earlier.
We did? Okay, because I was ranting to my husband about that earlier, and like he was on board. He was upset as I was.
Yeah, so listeners, it's what we mentioned earlier, the Fron party where Pen and Colin are sat together and Colin has like a massive plate of cakes and treats.
And they're basically cut out for no reason.
He was so cut out that people were like, maybe it's a body double. The reaction Lecky had when she saw the behind the scenes shot of like Luke Newton fully on set, fully embracing character, only for like a little sliver of him to appear.
I was very annoyed. Why have them there and not include them in the frame? Like, it would take them a split second shot. Anyway, sorry, moving on.
I mean, maybe episode 5 will pick up from the end of episode 4 and we'll continue. Like, Michaela will walk into the party. I don't know. It feels like a moment's passed, doesn't it? Poor Colin.
Yeah.
Luke, you looked great and we appreciated your biscuit work. Thank you very much. It did not go unnoticed.
Well, Nicola also looked great. I would have liked to have seen more of her as well.
Oh yeah, she wasn't in that shot either, was she?
You see the corner of her face and then you see them holding hands and like the bottom of her dress.
It was a great corner of face, Nicola.
Good Lord. Could you just move the camera up just a little bit or just pull back just a little?
I know there's a height difference, so it's sometimes a bit choppy to get them both in.
Yeah.
But when they're sitting down, do we have any excuses?
Also, it's kind of like the charade sequence in episode 5. There's so many characters and they don't always cut people off by their heads. I think there's like the one where Colin and Penelope are sitting on the sofa and then behind them Benedict and Tilly are cut off, but they're like on a different level. And then at the same time, they cut to them so you actually see their faces. Could you please just give us Polin's faces? Sorry.
A request from Lecky Merritt. Please just give us Polin's faces.
Anyway, sorry.
Polin, off you go. waltz away if you can. 2 people who might not be waltzing for much longer. It's our lovely Fran. 2 people who might be waltzing in the future. Frankayla.
Yes.
It's time to talk Fran and Frankayla. Shall we start with Frankayla first? Because that feels like the lighter storyline before we get into the deep, dark depths of death, I suppose. Of course, at the end of season 4, Michaela rocked up to Mayfair without much notice, and Fran was not best pleased with that moment. Obviously, Michaela is on site. What is going to happen with Frankayla in the rest of the season? Maybe we should speculate what's going to happen before John dies, because I don't know that necessarily like talking about Frankayla after John's death is super useful in this discussion. So what do you think might happen with Fran and Michaela in the meantime?
Okay, so like I said, I think this trailer has a lot of episode 5 moments, so I'm just going to guess that a lot of these scenes that we're seeing of John and Frankayla are from the earlier part of part 2, and to be honest, that makes sense because I think John dies at the end of episode 6.
Sorry.
So I think a lot of those moments are from episode 5 or 6. The ones with Michaela, she's like wearing a red dress and she comes over to Fran, and Fran is smiling, but Michaela isn't. So my thought is that maybe Michaela is having trouble dealing with her own feelings for Fran, which I would really appreciate, to be honest.
I want to see that. Yeah.
Or Fran has done something to upset her, but I don't know. And then later in the trailer, there's like another scene where I think there's a lot of trickery here, or it was the original teaser trailer, where she's like coming in through the doorway. And then we kind of see that same shot again in the actual trailer of Michaela and John like chatting in front of the fire. And Fran has like an interesting expression on her face, but it looks like softer. So I feel like maybe she's becoming more comfortable with Michaela's presence there.
Yeah. For a start, I love what you said about us seeing Michaela's side of things, because I think that's what I like miss so much at the end of 308. We've talked it to death a little bit, but
I would love to see that.
That's such a core part of their story, isn't it? Like that, well, in the book, like Michael's perspective of how he immediately fell in love with Fran and then loved her from afar.
Yeah.
That I really want to see translated into Michaela. But you make a really good point. And interestingly, our listener, Late, made a point that I think is useful for Fran's perspective. Late said, the trailer reminded me that Michaela showed up in Mayfair uninvited at the end of part 1. I feel like the show thinks of Michaela as dynamic and endearing, but I feel like she's being a more of an overbearing pest. Is it just me? And what I'm going to say to Late is, that feels like a really useful mindset to have for Fran in terms of...
That seems like Fran's mindset.
She's like very irritated by her presence, you know? And so it's useful if the show kind of shows us that. Obviously, we know why she's so irritated and that there's like a whole complexity of her feelings as to why that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't, as an audience, know Michaela very well when she... Like, we met her briefly at the end of season 3 and we've heard a little bit of maybe Fran didn't get on with her massively in Scotland. And then suddenly she just sort of rocks up and it's like, oh my God, who's this person just showing up again? Like, another subplot.
Right. I can't remember if this is in the actual trailer or the teaser trailer. I'm sorry. But there's another shot of Fran. She's sitting before a mirror. John is standing behind her, and it's obviously they're right before bed and they're having like a little chat. And I feel like we were just talking about the mirror imagery with Penelope. I feel like that's a moment of self-reflection for Fran that might be a turning point in her relationship with Michaela in accepting her presence and maybe even burying those feelings that she has. I don't really know exactly how that's going to go.
And you were mentioning about the scene where her and Michaela and John are sort of on the floor in front of the fire, and it's really sweet between them. So, as Late said, she sort of just turns up uninvited as Michaela, but I think what episode 5 and episode 6 really need to quickly build if John is going to die, we really need to see Michaela's bond with John.
The affection.
Because Michaela's not just like a random character. She is going to be a leading character in a future season. And it is so important that we get that bond that they have before, obviously, everything happens. And I think that will really help us endear to her character and get to know her. But I think that will also help, like you said, Fran really endear and grow connected to her character.
Yeah. And furthermore, I feel like we will be seeing that through Fran's eyes, that she'll be seeing that bond between them and then realizing like, I have to accept Michaela in my life because she is so important to John.
Yeah. Lucky, we've talked a lot in the past about Frankayla and how far things might go. And what are you thinking at the moment about where the two of them will get to just before John dies? Because I speculated in the past, like maybe something might happen between them before he dies. And now, after you've unpicked the trailer for me, I'm a bit more...
hopeful?
Yeah, I'm a bit more like... Obviously, Fran is still feeling so much that she doesn't have the vocabulary for, right? Hopefully, we see Michaela feeling that same way for her, with more awareness, obviously, as to how she's feeling. But I do sense that Fran has been, like, antagonistic or cold to Michaela. And maybe Michaela takes it as like, oh my God, this girl does not like me at all. Mm-hmm. And maybe they get to this very sweet, genuine point of like, oh, yeah, I like you and we're family and like we're going to get on together. Mm-hmm. And then John dies.
The part 2 trailer made me really hopeful for what we're going to see from the Frank-Kayla relationship going forward, because I don't mind sensing that there is this connection between them that's indescribable. A connection between them under the surface that we realize as viewers is going to be so important, but that maybe they don't quite realize the extent of it yet. And that I feel like we're going to see glimmers of that where like they come to an understanding and they both realize how much they love John, which I feel like is so important. And seeing that connection between them kind of build and sowing the seeds for their future relationship will be great. And something I feared in part 1 is that the whole issue of the pinnacle, that they were going to turn that into a dramatic plot point in part 2 where maybe she would get there because of Michaela in some fashion. And now I'm thinking like maybe we won't even see that. But you know, it is Bridgerton and they like drama, so it's possible. But it feels like they're taking like a way more restrained approach to this than I had envisioned. And I really appreciate the story they're telling me, at least in the trailer.
Yeah, because I know you've not really read Fran's book, but it is a really lovely story. And I think Michaela will bring so much to that story as well. You know, the way that we picked apart like Polin's story in season 1 and season 2, and we're like, oh my gosh, isn't it going to be amazing when we've seen season 3 to like look back on those early moments? Like these are the early moments from Frank-Kayla.
Yeah.
So if they had these really sweet moments together where, they don't know where their future is going to take them, but they have this genuine connection, then I think obviously it's going to be a very sad story and it's going to maybe take a while to get fully there for Frank-Kayla, but like a gentler approach where, you know, it's not emotional cheating to have unexplained feelings for someone because she's not acting on them or like deceiving anyone or sort of going behind anyone's back or anything. It's just a person who loves her husband in the way she loves him and then also has a very real connection with another human being that maybe she doesn't know what that is, but the future will tell us what that is. I just want the story to have time. If he's going to die in the end of episode 6, we don't really have time for lots of messy drama for Frank-Kayla. And so I don't want messy drama. There's time for mess in their season. I just want to see the sweet bond that, like the tiny little seeds that's going to grow in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, unfortunately, we have to come to the topic of John's death as if we haven't mentioned it like 50 million times.
Yeah.
Because like we said earlier, there is that moment where you see Francesca wearing black, which is the colour of mourning.
Yep.
G said, Fran's clothes, oh my God, they will break our hearts in part 2. Well, I had a nice light wine while watching part 1. I think I'm pouring myself a generous amount of single malt whiskey for part 2. Make sure it's Scottish whiskey, G. And Liz says, does John die? If so, when?
Okay, I have some thoughts about this.
Luckily, someone has assembled a massive timeline.
So I think he dies at the very end of episode 6, which is called The Passing Winter. And I feel like the title will not only relate to the passage of time, because it looks like the beginning of part 2, we're in autumn. So I feel like we're going to move into winter for John's death, and that the arrival of winter will maybe mark the end of our dear John. Plus, it makes sense to me that they would have him pass in The Passing Winter and then focus on the aftermath and the aptly named The Beyond in episode 7.
The Beyond.
And if we're looking at story structure as well, looking back to like episode 306, this is when we had the Lady Whistledown reveal. That, of course, was like a really big turning point in the maiden love story. But I think if they are sticking closely to the book, we will see some of those big Benophie plot points, maybe in episode 7 or 8 instead. So maybe the big event at the end of this episode actually has to deal with the Fran subplot, is what I'm thinking.
Well, Purple Cat said, I know John's death is going to wreck me. I don't want it to happen, and yet it will be a direction we haven't seen the show go in yet. I suppose the death of Edmund was there in season 2, but that felt contained in flashbacks. This all feels very new and uncharted. For a show that was always rainbows, glitter and unicorns, a light spot in the dark times of lockdown, etc., I worry that I won't be able to rewatch season 4 part too much. It might just be a bit too sad. And I think Purple Cat mentioned like that Queen Charlotte was quite dark. And I know that we've never really rewatched Queen Charlotte too much because it was like so dark.
Yeah. Even the bittersweet moment of them, like, under the bed, just the sadness of it. Oh, God, I'm getting sad just thinking about it. Like, it's just heartbreaking.
Sometimes, like, he just cries about the little shoes under the bed. Sometimes, like, he just cries, they say. You know, it's just part of the course, isn't it?
I was watching the Olympics with my husband the other night, and, like, there's something about, like, human stories that really get to me. Because, like, I was watching some figure skating. Shout out to Beans, who loves figure skating. And this guy, like, had this stumble, and the end of his routine, like, you could tell he was just devastated, and I started crying for him. Anyway, sorry.
Oh my God, I can't deal with stuff when people stumble like that. No, God. I mean, from figure skating to John dying,
Skating on by, skate on out of this world.
Both pretty cold, I suppose. Earlier on, we talked about the Benedict scene right in front of Fran, and we touched on like grief and the reaction to grief. And I've been thinking about this a lot because, like Purple Cat said, this is a real turn for the show as a whole. We've never seen the grown-up Bridgertons confronted with something as dark as one of the family dying. Even like when Penn's dad died, we didn't really deal with that. Like, he died and they wore like dark orange, but then they kind of like moved on. I mean, obviously, like you say, we had the flashbacks, and Violet and Anthony were both massively impacted by Edmund's death. And I suppose you could say that spilled out into the present for them. But someone dying unexpectedly in the middle of the story, like a young person as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's as traumatic as like Kate dying suddenly. Do you know what I mean? It's so unexpected for the formula to break in such a way. And if you're not familiar with the books, then you are going to be like,
what the fuck?
What the actual fuck? Like the general audience. And I'm really interested in how this will be like an acute and shock to the show and the tone. Obviously, Fran will be the most hard hit, and Michaela, of course. But it's the whole family. Like, we've seen scene after scene of how close the boys are to John.
Yeah.
Like, they've embraced him as one of their own. And I'm really intrigued to see how the characters are going to be shaped by such a shocking death. And we touched on it earlier, but what I'm really interested in is the impact it's going to have on Benedict.
I think it'll have a huge impact, yeah.
Because, you know, imagine being in these dark tussles of like, if you're with her, you have to leave society and never be around here and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it's all of those like high stakes. And then suddenly you're confronted with the highest stake of all, which is the person you love dying. And like, it's game over. They're gone. And I think that is such a shock to the system of it's like, life is too fucking short. You know, some things are worth it. He's just lucky to have her. He's just lucky to have the person he loves alive and breathing. Death is such one of those reckoning forces in your life where it makes you reassess everything, right? It makes you reassess your priorities. It makes you reassess your outlook on life. And it might just make him go like, fuck it. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's worth it because at least she's here and at least I can have her and we'll figure it out.
I had an idea because they really love dialing up the drama in part 2 in ways that I don't even like, but I even had to admit this was kind of a good idea. But I think that episode 7, The Beyond, will be the return of spring because there's nothing bleaker than like a family grieving when the world is coming alive again and you realize like you can't do that because the person you love is gone.
Lucky, my God.
There's like the shot in the trailer of Benedict. He's wearing black and he goes to see Sophie and she's out in the garden and it's green because it's spring again. I think it's early spring because he's wearing like a really heavy coat.
Got the timeline.
But I feel like they're going to be dealing with this intense drama of John's death as the world is coming alive again, as it's being reborn and like someone they love has been lost.
Now, I think I mentioned it in our part 1 reaction that like I love the family moments where, you know, when Gregory returned and John was there and he's such a part of the family immediately. Like as soon as one of the siblings marry, the rest of the siblings are just like, great, another one. And there is something so compelling to me about seeing a family being shaken in such a way as individuals, because grief is so personal, and then as a family unit as well. Like we've talked about what Ben might learn. It's also like, will Eloise learn something about life and living and loving?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And to touch on that moment that Benedict had where like he exploded in anger, and some people are a bit like, oh my God, can you explode in such a way in anger? Like when someone's just died? And I know personally that's how I always deal with grief. Like I don't really like sit and cry necessarily. Like I just like get very angry and like have like an outburst. And it's the same way that you can see Fran in the background just being like very quiet and withdrawn and like she's not kicking off and screaming and crying and sobbing. It's such a personal experience that I can understand why Benedict would have such an emotional outburst because he was close to John too. And it's like such an acute loss that's happened to the heart of the family.
Just to touch on this, Claudia gave a really, really interesting interview where she talks about the effect of Eloise's siblings getting married, because we've like long theorized that would kind of push her into her season and that Benedict would kind of be the tipping point for her. But she also said that this particular love story teaches Eloise that love can be miraculous and most significantly, in my opinion, that it can be an act of rebellion. And I feel like it's not just an act of rebellion because of the class system and crossing classes, but also loving when you know that love can be extinguished, that a partner can die and be taken from you, kind of like Antony's journey. So I feel like that part of John's death will maybe impact Eloise also and show her that love is something so beautiful that maybe she shouldn't fight against it quite so much.
And that's just made me think of like because obviously it's going to be really dark and heartbreaking to see that happen to the family as well. And it's like, what a beautiful way to find hope in all of that is to like gather around Benophie and be like, gosh, we're so lucky to like have each other. And there's this beautiful story, this new love, this new potential. Maybe we should just gather around that and then celebrate. And that's kind of how they find their way, because obviously you can't have the end of the season being like a really morose moment. It has to have like joy. And the idea of grappling with loss, but then also like embracing the joy where you find it. And if the family find the joy in Benedict and Sophie, really celebrating and fighting for that. On a slightly darker note, sorry to go morose again.
Is this a darker note? I thought we were getting to Vicus. What's dark about Vicus?
I have a dark comment about it. There weren't tons of Vicus moments in the trailer, and what we did have was very joyous. They were like rolling around, having a great time.
Yeah.
Our listener Liz said, I'm starting to worry about characters dying that I hadn't even considered. Please not Marcus.
Oh, Lord. They wouldn't do that to Violet twice.
You don't know.
Can you imagine? She'll have 2 tiny portraits on her nightstand. Sorry, Violet.
On to the next. I do like the idea that Liz is just like so worried about everyone. She's like, oh my God, there's people I haven't even worried about yet. However, I don't think Marcus is going to die, Liz. I think he's marked safe. But something I have been thinking about a lot recently, and if you're on our Patreon, then I wrote about this on our Patreon. I was wondering about the impact that Fron might have on Vicus and Benophie, actually. Because I've been thinking, like, what is the end point of the Vicus storyline? Like, are they going to marry? Are they going to have a long courtship? Are they just going to be hookups?
You think it'll drive them apart to contrast the main love story? Is that what you're saying to me?
Potentially. Because you've been talking a lot about, like, the first part of the season being, like, fantasy and, like, fun and possibility, and the second half being reality.
The reality of it.
So the first half was like this light story of them growing closer together and finding that joy together.
They're such a sweet couple.
Where we left them, she's really embracing this new part of life, this joy in her life that she didn't think there was room for it in her life anymore. But then, you know, what happens when your daughter loses her husband and is consumed by grief? Can you still justify obviously as a human, you should always find joy. But like as a mother, will she feel like so compelled to like, will she feel guilty for having happiness when her daughter has just been widowed? In terms of Benophie, if she's there telling Ben like, there are consequences to your actions, will she still be able to just go off and have a great time with Marcus?
That's a good point.
Will she feel like grounded by the reality of her situation amongst everything else?
That's really interesting. I really love their relationship, so it would break my heart if it went in that direction.
Well, maybe it's just a tension and it doesn't fully go that way and they stay together.
Right, but there's also the whole theme of letting go this season with Queen Charlotte, Lady Danbury. So that could even be something with Vicus where potentially Violet realizes like the fantasy was great, but like long term this isn't going to work. But to be honest, I just really want them to be happy together. But I feel like your point is really valid that they might not be able to continue this kind of like fling unmarried. So maybe they need to get married. I don't know.
Yeah. I just wonder if she is so rattled by John's death and she's like, oh my God, I need to start prioritizing my children.
Yeah.
Put pause on her own happiness. But then I can also imagine a scene where Marcus is like, I really understand, but life is for living.
Or I can't wait for you. Because also, that would be also very, maybe even too similar to season 3, where she's like, I have to wait until Francesca's settled. And if he's like, are you going to do that forever? Or are you going to let yourself be happy and let your children deal with their problems at the same time? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's a very understanding man, but he might not be like, okay, putting their relationship on hold every time one of her 8 children has a problem.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a conflict that's in part 2, but is resolved quite quickly. Like, I don't know that it's going to break them up permanently, but maybe it's just a conversation where he has to gently be like, I understand where you're coming from, and I understand if you need time, but like, yeah, life is for living. And Violet, embraces that. Rachel, our listener, said, do you think part 2 is going to have 3 heartbreaks in it in tandem with Benophie? The Benophie happily ever after, sorry. I think it is clear from the part 2 trailer that John is going to die. I think we're going to have to say goodbye to Lady Danbury alongside our dear Queen. I don't think you meant death there. I thought you meant just like general heartbreaks. Basically, Rachel is wondering, will they also kill off George, the king? I'm not sure my heart could take it.
I thought they would, but the thing is, at the Queen's Ball, the Queen isn't wearing black, but is it possible that she's just no longer in mourning by that time? Like there's been some more time shenanigans, another time jump?
Another time jump.
More time has passed, so maybe she has come out of mourning. I don't know. I was pretty sure that he was going to die this season because I felt like I said, it's more meaningful if she lets Lady Danbury go when the worst thing possible has happened to her. But the trailer doesn't give anything away. But like we said, it seems like there's just a lot of early moments in the trailer.
I do think George will die at some point in the show. I don't know that it's going to happen. I just don't think it has time to happen if you're talking about everything else that's got to go on. Maybe George dying would be an interesting note for Francesca's season in terms of, you know, dealing with grief and finding love again after grief. I don't know. I just don't know we have time for George to die.
It could, but I feel like it's especially relevant this season with the Lady Danbury drama, but we'll see.
Well, talking of Queen Charlotte and Lady Danbury, there weren't tons of hints in the trailer, but there was that lovely moment where they both sort of look at one another with tears in their eyes. Do you think that is the Queen learning to let Lady Danbury go? If she lets Lady Danbury go, will she let Pen go, I suppose?
I think so. She's wearing butterflies in her wig. And Penelope isn't in jail. She's at the ball. So I have to imagine it ends well.
Well, maybe the jail was just full up, Lecky. I don't know how the Queen is going to get there, but I'm looking forward to it because Gold has played it really well, this sort of like turn of the Queen being like almost traumatised by the idea of Lady Danbury going, and whatever gets the Queen to the point of letting her go in this really bittersweet but beautiful way, I think it'll be really compelling to watch. To wrap up a couple of the other little storylines that maybe didn't get much focus in the trailer, but we can hope will pop up on our screens in the full thing. Cantony. So we've touched on Anthony, but there's no Anthony without Kate, is there? So Pink Bunny has said, what part will Cantony play, and will they end the season by going back to India so they can be easily written out? R.I.P.
Oh, Lord. I hope not. I hope they go off to Aubrey Hall. Like, it's the perfect explanation.
Just go to Aubrey Hall. It's so much easier. Please.
Yeah, like, don't put that woman on a ship with 2 toddlers again, please.
She deserves better. They've got a beautiful home in Aubrey Hall. Just, I understand if you can't write them into every season or they have to come and go, just put them in Aubrey Hall.
Also, that would be perfect for Eloise's season, because then if they do have time to like show up during season 5, they can just like dash over to Romney Hall for the brothers scene.
I can't be waiting for Anthony to get off the boat. I've not got time for that. I don't know how much other Kate and Anthony scenes we could. I mean, we'll get like little snippets of them together. I think their role will primarily be tied up with that like Benedict scene that we were talking about earlier. I hope that Kate offers a perspective because she has such a great grounding force with Anthony.
Yeah, and I think we might see her at the Queen's Ball based on the Korean merch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Get that girl in a ball dress. And I don't know how many babies they have. It's very confusing, but they are very, very cute.
I think they have 2, but I'll get to that, I guess. We could come back to that.
Okay, hold that thought. I don't want to talk about this now because it's so sad. Portia and Varley. Purple Cat said, I didn't see Varley. I'm desperate to see how that pans out. Come on, Polin, get your housekeeper back.
I love how they didn't show us any of this because it's the thing we're most devastated by.
Because it was too upsetting. You can't put that in a trailer. Of course, Varley is at Penwood House. Well, it's not Penwood House. It's Araminta's Dowager House. I don't know what that would get called. She's at Araminta's place. Purple Cat, I'm so sorry. I slightly stalked you on Reddit a little tiny bit. We're friends. It's cool, guys. It's fine. But Purple Cat, I saw a comment that you made on, I can't remember what subreddit it was, and you made a really good point about Varley. Purple Cat was like, I wonder, because Varley is like a spy on the inside over at Araminta's place, and Purple Cat wondered if Varley might discover the real Will. Do you know the real Will that has, not Will Mondrich, but the real Will that has...
That Araminta lied about in 402. Right.
Yes. And when I saw that comment, I was like, oh, interesting, because I'm thinking about A Cinderella Story, the Hilary Duff movie here, because this happened. So there's like a real Will and a fake Will. And I was like, if there's one woman in the ton that understands forgery, it's Varley.
I love this idea.
So I like the idea that maybe she finds the fake Will and the real Will, and she's like, I know exactly which has been forged because she signed a dodgy sheet or two in the past.
I think this would be so clever.
How fun would that be?
I would really love if they used Varley, like that kind of calling. And also, I love when they refer to things that happen in past seasons, kind of like just reminding us that this is a really cohesive world and story that we're watching. So to remind us of something from so long ago, yes, please, Varley, the forging expert. Yeah, please, testify, Varley.
And then the judge will be like, and how is it that you have such prolific knowledge of forging of important documents? So maybe Varley will find it and just not tell anyone to implicate her. Oh my gosh. In terms of Vorsha reconciliation, I remain pained but hopeful.
Has to happen.
I think distance will make the heart grow fonder. I mean, they're technically still in the same square, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll have like devastating moments. You know when you've broken up with someone and like you see them at like the shop.
And she lives next door, for fuck's sake.
Imagine like this heartbreaking shot of like Portia coming out of Featherington House and their eyes meet, and it's,
Portia also goes over to the Bridgerton house, as we've seen in 401, so they may bump into one another.
I want Portia to make a gesture. Maybe she could say that she loves her assuredly, fervently, loudly. Wins Varley's heart back, because Varley belongs back in that home.
Yeah.
And Polly Walker has said that Portia always ends up on top. Take that as you will. On the topic of servants, very few servants in the trailer, but I think we can throw a quick hope that Footmaid Hon will continue to flourish.
Yes.
And it sounds like if Hazel's like, there's more to life.
Yeah.
I hope she's finding that out firsthand.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, that maybe in the early parts of part 2, we'll see more of the Footmaid Hon relationship developing, and Sophie will be surrounded by a love story even in the downstairs world while she's fighting against her feelings for Benedict.
I love them so much, honestly. It's so cute. Although Murpham's mama was a bit worried about Alfie, because she said, perish the thought, Alfie's wardrobe and lack of wig makes me think he's been fired when he meets Sophie. Perhaps he tries to help Sophie and Araminta fires him. He's still like in his outfit, isn't he?
He is in his outfit.
Maybe he's just off duty.
I think he snuck away to see her.
Maybe he's popped at shops, as we'd say. I like the idea that Varley going to work for Araminta means that we get like more of Alfie. Imagine an Alfie Varley conversation. My word. But yeah, I do like the idea as well that he's sneaking away to support Sophie. I mean, they're both working households, so they both will be running errands all day, won't they? And then the last storyline to touch on Lecky is Eloise and Hyacinth. There was very little from them in the trailer. I don't think we saw Hy, did we? Oh, I mean, she's twirling around.
Some sort of ball or practice ball. I don't really know.
There was a glimpse of Eloise when it looked like Pen got pulled away from her.
There's actually, I don't remember if it was the teaser trailer or the trailer itself, but there's a shot of, it's when Benedict locks eyes with Sophie across the street when they're out in the ton. Sophie is there in her capacity as a lady's maid, because when they have this like bird's eye view of the street, and you see Eloise and Francesca on the left side of the frame. So she's out with them there.
Oh, she's present. It's really not clear whether Eloise is going to have like her own meaningful storyline in part 2, or if it's going to be like a continuation of like the Shelf, Hyacinth. I have to say I am a little bit disappointed in Elle in season 4, because I don't know, it's like the season before her season.
Well, we haven't seen much here. I think, like we said, this is a lot of the earlier moments of part 2. They could be doing some really interesting things with Eloise that we don't know about. And I'm really hopeful because of that one shot of her smiling as Penelope is pulled away by Colin at the Queen's Ball. That seems like, if I were a writer on the show, that would be a ball that maybe Eloise ran away from. I really would love an end of a Bridgerton season that's a cliffhanger, and I feel like that would be great to do for Eloise's season. Will they do it? Remains to be seen.
Didn't Jess Brownell say there wouldn't be a cliffhanger?
Maybe she's lying. I would like one. I personally would really enjoy a Bridgerton cliffhanger for once, because, like, why not?
Absolutely, go for it. The last characters are the Mondriches. We didn't see Will much in the trailer, but we did see Alice getting into costume as a lady in waiting. So
Right. There's like Lady Danbury's carriage pulls up at the Mondrich house in one of the trailers. And then there's a still of Will embracing Alice from behind, and he looks really happy. So I have to imagine that she's told him like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a lady in waiting. And then you see the shots of someone being corseted from behind and bewigged in that white wig that all the ladies in waiting wear. So I think that's the end of Alice's arc, and she finally gives in and becomes a lady in waiting.
And maybe Alice is a great lady in waiting, and the Queen's like, I don't need you, Danbury, anymore. Yeah, interesting. Lecky, it sounds like a lot is going on in part 2, and the trailers probably only just scratch the surface. Our listener Liz says, I'd really appreciate a Lecky timeline as I'm very confused. Well, Liz, you are in luck, because as I said earlier, I said, wouldn't it be lovely if someone took all the information and compiled it into a timeline? And then I went, okay, bye, Lek. And that is when she's so used to me being like, wouldn't it be lovely? And then she stays up to like 5 a.m. and I sleep through the night. And then I woke this morning to a lovely document in my inbox titled, Polin fans construct a shittier Benophie timeline. A timeline best left untold.
Yes. Editor's note, a bajillion new stills were dropped as we were doing the final touches on the edit for this episode, so you may hear a slightly less congested me chiming in here and there to offer a few more tidbits on the timeline for part 2 of season 4. But I am probably wrong about everything anyway, so take everything with heaps of salt, and I hope you enjoy.
So as promised, Lecky, you've constructed a shittier Benophie timeline, haven't you?
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
She laboured long into the night on this one, guys, so it's all on Lecky if it's wrong.
I think my last one was very incorrect as well, but
No, you were great. Lecky is a pro at this now. She is brilliant. I'm convinced. So we'll see. There's always something, isn't there, that throws us. Like your previous timeline for part 1, it was beautifully constructed. Who would have known that Sophie's flashback would have been in episode 2?
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, this is a mixture of both trailers and any little clips, teasers or stills that have been released since. So it's a little bit of amalgamation of everything we have gathered together and meticulously crafted together by Lecky's fair hand. And a disclaimer.
I think that we are seeing a lot of episode 5 in the trailer itself, or at least a lot of the first part of part 2, because I think, as I said, they're trying to shy away from showing those big plot points like John's death and such. So the first 2 episodes of part 2 are a little more detailed than the rest.
And book fans, if you've read the books, you'll be able to fill in the gaps as we go, but the rest of it is more or less kind of spoiler-free for books. There's some suggestions in there, but hopefully a little bit of mystery is retained if you haven't read the books. Beans, I'm speaking to you, babe, if you're listening. So, Lecky, how about you kick things off? Should we jump in to episode 5, aptly titled Yes or No?
Yes. Okay. Well, yes, I will start it instead of saying no and then just skipping the timeline.
Yes or no, Lecky? Are you going to start episode 5?
Yes. So before we can get to the passing winter, we find ourselves opening part 2 in the autumn, because in the trailer we see like the vista of Mayfair and all the trees are full of autumn leaves. Sometime later, we find Ben sitting at his desk in his bachelor lodgings, and the desk is now covered with drawings of Sophie instead of the Lady in Silver. And he pulls out a piece of paper and writes her a letter. This is pure speculation, but I think he writes her a letter because in the trailer he tells her at one point, "You didn't answer my letter." And in the next still I'm about to cover, we see Sophie holding a letter. I think that's the letter that Benedict sent her. We know both of those stills are from 305, and I think this is the letter she doesn't answer.
Quick point on that. I would give anything to read that letter. I hope we hear the letter. There's a habit in this show of not reading letters that have been sent back and forth. So,
you know what I hope it says? Please, let me explain.
Oh, Tilly, he's learned from the best.
Yes.
I can only assume the letter doesn't go down too well,
Yeah.
seeing as though she doesn't reply to it. So maybe not the best apology.
Right.
What else can we expect?
Sometime later, Benophie bump into each other. I think that Sophie is out with Fran and Eloise in her capacity as a lady's maid, because there's like a bird's eye view of the street, and you see Fran and Elle on the left side of the frame. But anyway, Ben is standing next to some autumn foliage, which tips me off this is earlier in part 2 as opposed to later, and he sees Sophie from across the street. He asks why she didn't answer his letter, and she says, "Because I do not wish to see you." Pretty clear. And she tells him that they were carried away, referring to the staircase scene. A little later on, I think that Benedict then maybe finds Sophie in his study at Bridgerton House. He's wearing the same outfit, I think, that he was wearing in the scene on the street that I just covered. So I think maybe this is like right after or a little while after, but that's very intense of Benedict if he like seeks her out so quickly.
Take a hint, babe. Jesus.
Yeah, he could be re-wearing the same outfit, but I think this might be potentially connected just because the outfit is the same. But he basically in that clip admits that the Lady in Silver doesn't hold a candle to Sophie, calls her irresistible, and tries to kiss her. I think it maybe doesn't go super well, and that Benedict can't make sense of it, and sometime later he visits the Mondriches to ask Will for advice. I think he probably consults Will because of his background in the lower class, trying to figure out like what Sophie is thinking. And Will tells him, no matter her rank, no woman truly desires to be hidden. But Benedict can't envision a world where they could be together without Sophie being hidden because she is a maid. And he doesn't yet understand her hangups about not wanting to be a mistress either. So we'll have to get there eventually, I think, in this episode.
I like that. It's also, she doesn't want to be a mistress because of society and everything, but she's like, I don't want to be a mistress to your idea of the Lady in Silver.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. And then Hazel, at some point, I think in this episode, tells Sophie that, you know, they aren't just born simply to work and die, making Sophie wonder if maybe pursuing a moment of happiness with Benedict is worth it. And I was thinking this scene could also serve as some foreshadowing for John's death as well, because it's mentioning death. At some point in this episode, I believe that Fran throw a soiree and Michaela wears red. Fran is smiling, but Michaela isn't. So I think she's either having trouble dealing with her own feelings for Fran in the scene, or maybe Fran has done something to upset her.
Also likely.
And just touching on the new stills from this scene, there definitely seems to be some tension between Frankilla. So maybe Fran has done something to upset her. Later in this episode, Greg, Finch, and Colin sit down to eat some cheese and chat at the Featherington house. Colin offers love advice to Greg, who we learn has a crush. Luke Newton also said that he indirectly offers Benedict advice, so maybe he overhears this conversation where Colin says, "You must be brave. You cannot let fear stop you from letting your heart speak." Editor's note, just chiming in to say that the new stills confirm that Benedict is present in this scene because you can see a little glimpse of him in one of the new stills that was released. So he definitely overhears Colin's advice. I think that Benedict takes this to heart and decides to tell Sophie how he feels, wondering if that would make a difference. During their earlier conversation, she thought they were just carried away, so maybe she will change her mind when she knows the depths of his feelings for her. So he approaches Sophie at what I think is like a practice ball or a recital, because in the second episode of Bridgerton, the official podcast, Ruth says that she introduces Marcus to her children at a recital. Aww. And then hilariously, she introduces him to her kids by saying, "I have a friend."
Oh my god.
So I think this is that scene.
Well, you can see Hyacinth dancing as well, can't you?
Yes, and in the upper right corner of the frame, you actually see Marcus standing with Violet. So he's definitely at this ball, which makes me think that is this moment.
Hang on, sorry, don't want to derail conversation. Wasn't Marcus at Fran's wedding?
Yes, he was, yeah.
So what do you mean?
Why not introduce him then?
Yeah, he was there.
Who did they think he was? Yeah.
What do you mean she's introducing him? Like, they've met.
A belated introduction.
Carry on, guys. Whatever.
If this is a recital, it kind of looks like on the dance floor, there's like some younger debutantes with like older men. So I wonder if maybe like Ben is there to dance with High as like a stand-in for her father, which I think could be really sweet.
Don't.
And that afterward, he finds Sophie by the refreshments. She's working the event as a maid. She's really curt and formal with him, asking if he needs something, and he breaks all of our hearts and delivers the best line of the season thus far by saying he's already found it, meaning her.
I wonder if seeing Benedict dance with Hyacinth and be really sweet with her sort of softens her a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, could he be the father of my illegitimate child? Oh, potential.
But then what happens if he dies, and leaves them penniless?
Oh, that's a good point. They do have a habit of that, don't they, the Bridgerton men, after all?
Yeah. Editor's note, Colin and Greg are also apparently at this recital, and it looks like Colin coaches Greg about maybe approaching his crush, likely one of the young debutantes in attendance. I'm guessing we'll see both Hyacinth and Greg then dancing in the scene, and this is probably the moment that Claudia Jessie has been touching on in some interviews where she said that there was a moment with Gregory and Hyacinth in part 2 that made her cry. And to be honest, I think I will also be in tears because it sounds like a very sweet scene.
Well, elsewhere, we have a worrisome shot of Fran tentatively peering through a door at night. Book fans freak out, fearing that John's died. I know that we certainly thought that in the teaser trailer. But Fran just finds Michaela and John still breathing, still living, chatting by the fire. Fran has a very interesting look on her face. Maybe this is some sort of turning point for her where Michaela is concerned. Maybe she softens a little bit towards Michaela and they sort of move past this awkward tension they've had earlier in the episode to have a bit of a breakthrough.
Yeah, because we talked about earlier that they really have 2 episodes to kind of show the bond between Michaela and John. And I feel like that has to be really impactful on Fran as well, and hopefully soften her towards Michaela and kind of push them into like the next chapter of that whole story for all 3 of them.
Yeah, a short chapter for some.
Yeah.
Before bed, John chats with Fran as she stares into the mirror. Quite literally a moment of self-reflection that solidifies whatever choice that she's come to, as we say, probably within regard to the Michaela situation. Maybe she's decided to not be so harsh with her.
Yeah.
And Ben is also not going to lose Sophie once he's found her, or now that he's declared as much, because it looks like he's wearing the same get-up later on in whatever room they had the shaving cream scene in.
I think it's the shaving cream room because if you look at the mantle, there's the same vases and like lion sculptures on the mantle, so it's the same room, but I think they've redressed it to look like a bedroom because if you look in the mirror behind Benedict, there's a bed. So I wonder if they used the same room and decor but changed it into like maybe Benedict's bedroom at the Bridgerton house.
What are you doing in Benedict's bedroom, Sophie?
Pulling a book Colin there. Oh, also, he's now unbuttoned his coat and ditched his cravat. Anyway, go on.
So maybe at this point, Ben tells Sophie that he can't stop thinking about her because Sophie apparently says in this scene, "When do you stop to think about me?" And he says, "Every moment of every day." This is when they talk a little bit more about the offer. Sophie tells Ben that he hurt her and says that being a mistress is the last thing she would ever want. Ben asks how he's to be with a woman society says it's impossible for him to be with. Things get a little heated perhaps, and Ben says, "And yet you have taken possession of me."
At any rate, I think they maybe make love for the first time in this scene.
Oh,
because there's a bed. There's a bed in the mirror.
How helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the idea that Polin and Benophie have swapped their locations of the first times. And at some point in this episode, Pen decides to retire and pens her retirement column. She writes maybe about being at a crossroads and that she must face it head on. Maybe she's forced into retiring in some way, picking up that Queen Charlotte plot from part 1. Either way, she has chosen the path of retirement and she's dipped a pen in the ink.
Yes. So in the trailer, we see her sitting at her desk, writing an issue of Lady Whistledown. I think this is the issue. Editor's note. So originally we thought that Pen had chosen the path of retirement at this point, but some of the new stills show Pen meeting with Lady Danbury and the Queen. Queen Charlotte does not look pleased, which kind of reinforces this idea, but I was thinking this could also be the Queen forcing Pen to write something that she doesn't wish to, and the retirement column maybe occurs next episode, which I will revisit in a bit. Also, at some point after this, Varley and Mrs. Wilson run into each other in town, according to the new stills. Alfie also looks like he's present. This is a possible opportunity for Varley to maybe learn about Sophie and her presence in the Bridgerton household, which could potentially set up Varley's involvement in Benophie's story in some way.
We're sure that a lot more is going to happen in episode 5, but those are all the bits that have been released so far that seem to fit into the episode at the moment. So that takes us to episode 6, which is called The Passing Winter. We're not really sure how the Benophie plot is going to go in this episode, but there was one scene...
I had left over. Sorry, she's reading what I wrote.
Oh, but there was one scene, there was one scene that Lecky couldn't fit anywhere, so she's put it here.
Yeah.
So in Lecky's beautiful version of episode 6, we have a very intense little Benophie scene. It's the moment where we're looking at their side profiles and they're very intensely looking at one another under candlelight. Very dramatic. Maybe this is where she told him that their night together doesn't change her opinion about being his mistress.
I think she's pulling back now.
Do you think it's a yes or a no, Lecky, in episode 5?
Well, I mean, ultimately it's a no, but I think she had a moment where she gave in because Hazel's words are ringing in her ear. You know, Benedict, I think, is maybe a little convincing and they have this intimate moment together, but then she kind of pulls back and realizes this is not going to work. This could never happen.
So ship's looking a bit rocky for Benophie. But a lovely ship that sailed all the way back to port is Cantony.
And the new stills confirm that Cantony do arrive home in episode 6.
Returning back with 2 babies in tow. Lucky, why do we think they maybe have 2 babies, beyond the fact that several years and eons have seemed to pass between the time they left and arrived back?
Right. Time shenanigans. And also there's a behind-the-scenes photo of 2, stand-in dolls on the Bridgerton set.
So creepy.
And the the smallest of the 2 dolls is wearing the same outfit that we see the baby wearing in the scene with Vi and Pen, where Ben is watching them interact with the baby. So I think there may be 2 babies.
And it would make sense because the Cantony baby from the first teaser trailer looks way too young, considering that she was quite heavily pregnant at the time they left. And that was in the spring of 1815.
Yeah.
Also, notably, Lecky, 2 beautiful words because Anthony has a beard.
Yes.
And he's also wearing blue, so this definitely seems to be pre-funeral.
Right.
Who can forget that incredible little promo clip of Jonathan Bailey waving at the camera?
Yes. At that point, Benedict sees a domestic scene of Pen, Vi, and the Cantony baby, or one of the Cantony babies. Lady Danbury sees him watching, and in an interview, Adjoa described a similar scene I think we touched on earlier, but she mentioned that Colin would also be there, so fingers crossed. But this is a moment where Lady Danbury gives Benedict advice and basically says, if this is something that you want for yourself, you have to have the courage to ask for it. We then maybe get the first of 2 scenes of Benophie together in a garden. In this one, the sky's overcast and Ben is wearing a blue coat as opposed to the morning attire we see him in later. He officially confesses his love, but Sophie asks, what is love in the face of society?
Meanwhile, Araminta arranges for her girls to have tea with the Bridgerton girls, their new neighbours, making friends. Posy sees Sophie and is taken by surprise, and Rosamond sees her sister's weird reaction, but not Sophie, who seems safer now. If you remember, this is a very old promo shot of Hyacinth and Eloise kind of glaring at Rosamond and Posy. Sophie panics, worrying that she's been spotted, and this situation, coupled with the whole Benedict thing, pushes her to at least attempt to quit, but Violet talks her out of it. Violet is starting to get suspicious, however, and asks Mrs. Wilson if she ever gets the sense that Sophie is hiding something. She's on to you.
This kind of tracks with what happens in the book with Violet as well, so I feel like this makes sense to me.
Yeah, to start planting those seeds.
Meanwhile, the tension between between Queen Charlotte and Penelope starts to heat up. Queen Charlotte summons Penelope to the palace. It's worth noting that Pen's dress is covered in some subtle butterfly appliques, and Queen Charlotte's wig and dress are covered in very overt butterfly symbolism. And that symbolism could possibly be tying into the idea of Penelope's rebirth and her being freed from Lady Whistledown. And this may be suggesting that Penelope decides to defy the queen by retiring Lady Whistledown. Maybe this is a scene where Penelope asks to retire and is refused, and she goes on to do it anyway later in this episode, but we will get there.
Elsewhere, we see someone planning a very pink ball, and we can see the footmen prepping the ball and all wearing Penwood livery.
Right.
And because we see Sophie's stepfamily entering as guests, and because all the guests seem to be emulating her style, the pink gowns, the puffy sleeves, we think that this is the moment Cressida is making her big arrival back in the ton, not only as the hostess of the very pink ball, but as the new Lady Penwood. Again, as we said earlier, this tracks with a book plot point, as the Penwoods had to move out of their new home as the new Lord Penwood took residence, which is the whole reason they moved next door to the Bridgertons in the first place.
Right.
Cressida throws a ball. I hope it's amazing. I hope she has an incredible entrance. I hope Pen is seething. It's going to be wonderful. The Penwoods attend, along with all of our faves, save Benophie, we guess. Before the ball, we see Penelope staring into a mirror to fortify herself. We know they love Pen in a mirror, don't we all? Especially Colin. But it seems like this is a big moment that she's gathering herself before she makes a grand statement at Cressida's ball.
Right.
At the pink ball, you can see glimpses of Fron and Polin, and Cressida is there also mingling in the background with someone who seems to be the new Lord Penwood. Basically, she looks like a glorious pink Barbie. I'm personally thrilled for her.
She also has a very dramatic V-neck, like in 306, because it seems like we're going to get quite a few season 3 parallels in this episode, potentially.
And touching on the parallels, this is the moment the doors open and in flutter a whole ream of Whistledown pamphlets announcing Penelope's retirement, stealing the thunder at Cressida's ball. I'm sure she's going to be absolutely bloody thrilled.
Right.
This is, of course, that moment where Penelope is standing next to Colin and looks pretty proud of herself as Whistledowns are read in the background.
Right. Sometime later, Antony reclaims his study and chats with Ben. Antony tells Ben that he's convinced himself that Sophie is worth risking everything for, but the implication is Antony doesn't think she is, maybe? Hence the use of the word convinced. Plus, Benedict doesn't look very happy about what he's hearing from his brother here. Ben also at one point in one of the trailers says, "I cannot love a maid." And I think this might be to Antony or Will, but let's just say it's Antony, and he's saying it sarcastically out of frustration, kind of like repeating the message that his brother is telling him.
There is also another shot of, lucky this moment from the trailer killed me, of Fron embracing at the ball. Maybe this is the moment that Francesca's really found peace in her relationship and her bond with John, and they had this gorgeous little moment together.
Yeah.
And of course...
And it may be their last.
Maybe your last. Enjoy it while it lasts. It won't be long.
Yeah.
Because we think at some point in this episode, after the pink ball, after one last glorious night, John kicks the bucket.
Right. Editor's note, a still from the next episode actually reinforces this, as we see Footman John wearing a black armband around his arm, which tracks with the mourning customs from the period.
Rest in peace, John. Fly high with the angels, which are at this point Edmund, Archie, who else is dead?
Who else is dead?
Lord Penwood.
Yeah.
Who else has died? Maybe King George.
Sophie's mom.
Sophie's mum, of course. Yeah. Lots of people, basically.
George. Marina's George.
Oh, yeah, of course. On the battlefield. Yeah. Sorry, John. Fly high with all of them. I'm sure that's like a great night at White's in the sky, you know?
Yeah.
That sounds like a real crowd up there. Lucky I'm too heartbroken to talk about anything else. This is the part where I will be too much in tears to see what's on my screen. So what do you think is going to happen in the rest of the episode? Beyond Francesca presumably finding her husband dead, you know, where do we go from there?
Editor's note, at some point after Cressida's ball, I think we will head back to the palace where Lady Danbury will meet with Queen Charlotte, and they're still in the attire that we saw them wearing earlier that day when Queen Charlotte met with Penelope. I think this is after Pen's retirement column, and Queen Charlotte looks and feels defeated, and Lady Danbury is there kind of acknowledging this and comforting her friend. Okay, to tie in the Benophie storyline, I was thinking what plot points would have the same theme. So with Fron, it's about Fran discovering John's death and the fallout of that. So I was thinking it would make sense then to have someone discover Sophie in this episode. Ooh. And we have two candidates, if they're sticking to the book, at least from what I recall, Posey and Araminta. So because I think Posey was misdirection earlier in this episode and she's not going to expose her sister, I think Araminta will find out about Sophie being at the Bridgertons in this episode.
Raising the stakes. stakes.
Right.
Because we've said it before, we'll say it again. Bridgerton has a tried and tested formula of the end of episode 6 being a huge shift in the story. It's the moment where things really kick off. It's the moment where the stakes are raised. So comparatively, we have season 1 was the Marina Colin scandal being announced. Season 2 was Cantony hooking up at the wedding and making the turn in that story. Season 3, of course, Penelope being discovered by Colin. It makes sense that episode 6 is also going to have a real big turn. And what bigger turn than a man dying and someone's secret identity being uncovered, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Moving into episode 7, The Beyond, I think like in 307, touching on those parallels again, we will open with a Bridgerton man distraught in bed. This obviously is pure speculation, as I keep saying, but Ben, I think, is reeling from the news of John's death and maybe from Sophie rejecting him after they've been intimate. And there's like the scene in the part 2 teaser trailer where he's like lying in bed with his shirt half open, I think, and he's like all distraught. And then Benophie later have an encounter, I think, in the Bridgerton garden. I think he seeks her out, and he's wearing black, so I think it's after John's funeral, I was thinking. And it appears to be spring again, if not early spring. And as I mentioned earlier, there's something really bleak about death contrasted against spring and new life. So I feel like that kind of fits that vibe. And I think that maybe he asks her to come speak with him inside. Again, pure speculation. I'm just trying to tie these scenes from the trailer together. But after this, I think that we'll see Sophie and Ben sharing a moment in the study at Bridgerton House, and they tentatively hold hands on his desk, that little moment from the trailer. I'm guessing Sophie again rejects him or something because he trashes his desk afterward, and you can see her actually like leaving the room. And then immediately after this in the trailer, we also see Sophie crying against a door. That doesn't mean the scenes are connected, but there was kind of like a similar beat in the first trailer after the lake scene where we saw her running away and like her panic breaths against a doorway. And I feel like this is kind of a similar vibe to that. So I'm going to place those scenes together here as well.
It makes sense to me that episode 5 and maybe a little bit of 6 is a lot about Sophie's anger at what he did in episode 4. And then this, of course, because you have to think if John dies, that will cast a real tonal weight over the story, won't it? So instead of Sophie having anger at the situation, maybe this is where it will be pure heartbreak.
Right.
Like they can't be together. Not just because she's annoyed at him or, you know, there's that dimension. It's like the heartbreak over the finality of their storyline as well, because they think that there's no way for them to be together.
Sometime later, Benedict asks Violet about what would happen if he married someone from the servant class, but Vi tells Ben that his family will support him, because Vi goes on to say, we all will, which I think is her saying that the Bridgertons will support the match, but it's edited to make you think the opposite. I think the scene is a bit misleading, but not entirely, and I will explain why. I think Violet tells Benedict that his family will support him if he decides to marry Sophie, but there is one sacrifice he will have to make, implying that he will actually be ostracized by society at large. This is actually very similar to a scene from the book, so I think that might be what's happening here. Because this falls earlier in episode 7, I think it's meant to make Benedict question what he is giving up if he does pursue Sophie to ramp up the stakes a bit. So whether that's Violet actually saying that Benedict will have to sacrifice his family or maybe just remove himself from society remains to be seen. Sometime later, I think Ben will get a visitor. I think we will be maybe misled into thinking it's Sophie, but it will be Vi, who is dressed all in black. And then I think that maybe she alerts Benedict that something is going on with Fran, setting up another scene I think happens later this episode. With several characters' comments about society ringing in his ears, including Sophie's, who last episode asked, what is love in the face of society? Ben says he's had enough of the demands of society. Fran stands behind him. They're at Fran's house and the curtains have been draped with black at the top like we discussed. I'm guessing that this scene in the trailer is also somewhat misleading and that Ben is upset about something to do with Fran, not Sophie. And if I had to guess, like I said, it's something about her being a widow without an heir. Sometime later, Sophie finds out that Araminta knows where she is. Maybe Alfie is the one to tell her, because we see that moment in the trailer where they're speaking together and he looks like he's kind of off duty, wearing his coat over his normal Penwood livery. So Sophie bumps into Alfie and then he asks her what she will do. I think he's commenting about what she will do about Araminta, not Benedict, as the trailer is kind of leading you to think he is. Afterward, Sophie returns to her quarters and stares into her mirror, wondering what she should do. And I think she's never going to really choose to stay and advocate for herself or even believe believe that she has a chance at a happy ever after with Benedict, so I think she'll decide to leave. Because they're using this mirror, which can symbolize things like dual identity, maybe Benedict has also discovered that she's the Lady in Silver in this episode and has not reacted well to the news, which is similar to something that happens in the book. In the show, they make a point of Sophie hiding away her necklace earlier in part 2 when Sophie comes to stay with Benedict at my cottage, so I'm thinking that may be a part of the key in him unlocking her identity. Or they may stick closer to the book and have Benedict realize the truth after seeing her wear something like a blindfold, which I think is hilarious. At any rate, Sophie writes a letter of resignation, or a farewell letter to Benedict. She symbolically blows out a candle marking the end of her time at Bridgerton House. It could be in the shaving cream room, as the window in the background looks really similar and both rooms have a desk with one candle on it.
Compelling evidence from Maggie.
As I mentioned earlier, I also think that they repurposed that shaving cream room into Benedict's bedroom, so it's possible that she leaves the note for him there. And then I think she also maybe burns her glove at this point, thinking this is the end of her story with Benedict.
Oh, it's only episode 7.
And then Sophie leaves Bridgerton House only to get plot pointed. A plot point happens.
A plot point happens to a girl. A girl is pointed by a plot.
Right.
The plot has been pointed.
Right.
Who knows what that could be?
There is also a shot of Ben racing out of the Bridgerton house and another one of him racing through the streets of Mayfair on horseback.
Love this. Love a man racing on horseback. Sad that we didn't get Colin doing it because Luke Newton couldn't ride a horse, but glad to see another man on horseback. Always.
Yeah. So could he have found out about Sophie leaving and is trying to stop her or rescue her if she's in peril? We will see. If they're sticking closely to the book, Ben may find out that Sophie is the Lady in Silver shortly before this scene, as I mentioned. And maybe he's a little upset that she kept that from him, so he arrives just too late to stop her from leaving as a result. And he is holding something white in his hand as he races out of the Bridgerton house. Since Sophie appears to have burned her glove earlier, I think he may be holding the glove that she left behind back in 401. I think it also might be more dramatic if he doesn't see Sophie kind of arriving too late, or if he arrives just in time for the aforementioned plot point to occur, but we will see how it goes.
And just to note, I think the plot point definitely would make sense to happen outside Bridgerton House because something to do with the plot point was spotted outside of Bridgerton House during filming.
Oh, yes. Sorry, just took a drink there. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Yes. Plot point object spotted, basically. So it makes sense. So, you know, there's that scene in the trailer where they're like both looking at each other from across the road.
Yeah.
Do you think he runs out with the thing, they look at each other and then she gets plot pointed?
I think that's like a dramatic shot of just like her preparing to leave.
I'm just wondering if like, because obviously he's discovered she's the Lady in Silver, right? And also that she's quit. So she's already gone out the house. He races out of the house with the glove or whatever in his hand. They have that shot where they look at each other across the street and he looks like really distraught.
I don't think they make eye contact. And if they do, I think it maybe happens when she's being plot pointed.
So like she sees him and then he sees her get plot pointed. And then that's the shot of him looking distraught. And then he runs back in to get his horse.
Maybe. I'm not convinced they make eye contact, but it's definitely possible because how else would he find out about it?
Yeah.
But it maybe would be more dramatic if he found out about it from one of the Penwoods.
She's been plot pointed. No.
Yeah, or somebody. At some point this episode, Lady Danbury also meets with a very upset Queen Charlotte. Lady Danbury looks kind of smug, and maybe she's pointing out that she can't really control other people regarding the Lady Whistledown situation, and maybe they discuss bonbons again, because there's some bonbons in a new still that was dropped.
Well, Sophie has been plot pointed, guys. What a terrible thing to happen to a person. And this carries us straight into episode 8, Dance in the Country. That sounds nice, or at least, you know.
Yes, yeah.
At least that's happy.
Yeah.
We don't think you can see much of episode 8 in the trailer, so there's not going to be tons of information here as to what we might get, but we're assuming that Sophie's plot point issues will get resolved.
Right.
Afterward, we may get the bathtub scene from recent promo. If they're sticking to the book, this would make sense to go in episode 8 after Sophie has been rescued from her plot point and unnamed peril.
Yeah.
It could come earlier if you remember, Polin fans. We know that mirror scene got chucked around left, right and centre. We know the first time scene got chucked around as well. So who knows when she might take a bath. But if they are following the book as closely as they have been doing, it would make sense for the bathtub scene to follow the plot point.
And to interject here, I think you can differentiate this from the other intimate scenes you see in the trailer, because in some of the other ones, she has like her maid's uniform goes like up higher on her neck. And I think that's also because it's still like winter and now it's like spring. So so she has like a uniform that's like cut a little lower.
A little low-cut maid's outfit.
Yeah.
That's, I'll tell you.
Also, you see in the trailer like her taking her hair down, and you see a robe on Ben, and in the book he's wearing like a dressing gown in the scene. So I think this all kind of fits together.
This is when we have that happy, the very rare happy Benophie scene in the trailer. We think that might be a post-coital scene, the morning after the bathtub, perhaps. But they look happy.
They do. They look very happy.
And it means it's time to wrap up a few loose ends. So Varley, a skilled forger, helps expose the forged will. Obviously, there's no signs of that in the trailer. That's just our pure speculation.
Right.
But Varley's help means that Sophie is revealed to be the daughter of a nobleman, and Violet likely helps make it possible for Benophie to get married.
And that's just referencing some book details.
The Queen throws a ball, the last ball of the season. This is when Queen Charlotte will agree to let Lady Danbury go.
One of the news stills reinforces this as we see them kind of holding hands on the edge of the ballroom. We also see that Queen Charlotte is not wearing black, but she is wearing George's portrait on her dress. So it's kind of up in the air if George has died. I'm guessing that maybe he hasn't died, but maybe because Lady Danbury is leaving, she's clinging to what she does have, and that's her love for her husband.
But the resolution to Lady Danbury's storyline there. Do you think that Penelope's been successful in her retirement? Do you think she's definitely put her pen down?
Yeah, she's got to get a happy ending. Everybody gets a happy ending on Bridgerton.
You can have a happy ending and you can have a happy ending.
Except for Cressida.
Yeah, unless you're Cressida.
We'll see how Cressida's story goes.
Eloise shares a moment with Pen before Colin sweeps her away into a dance. And we think that because of the moment in the trailer where you can just about see Colin pull a Pen away from Elle. They're at a ball. We want them to dance. We're just saying it's going to happen. We need a Polin dance in front of our eyes this season. Thank you.
Right. And again, this is the Korean merch I mentioned where it has 3 couples dancing in addition to Benophie. So I think we may see some other couples dancing at this ball, including Cantony and maybe Finch and Philippa. And hopefully Elle ditches the ball, but we'll see how it goes.
Meanwhile, Sophie and Benedict dance, and she's wearing blue dress and gloves. When do they get married, though?
At some point in this episode. Unlike the part 2 trailer for season 3, where you see Pen in a wedding dress, you don't see that for Sophie.
Oh my God, don't get me started.
However, you do see her dancing with Benedict at a ball, which means that all her troubles have been resolved.
We've had a lovely wedding, hopefully at my cottage. I wanted the Crabtrees to be in attendance. And in fact, weren't there spoilers during filming about Loseley Park that they were filming a wedding scene?
Yes.
Compelling evidence, guys. Compelling evidence. Look, Benophie got married.
Yeah.
Things are great. All's well that ends well. But in the trailer,
she's in the blurry background dancing with Benedict, and in the foreground you see Posey dancing with the suitor.
Oh, I love that like everyone else in the dance has their arms in the proper positioning, like wrapped around the shoulders of the gentleman. And she is
flying.
She's got her arms wide.
Speaking of butterflies.
Flying.
Yeah.
I love that touch.
Love it.
Benophie haven't been cast out of society, but they're having a lovely little dance. All's well that ends well.
And if you remember the behind-the-scenes photo that we mentioned of the Penwoods all together, in that photo, Rosamund is wearing an engagement ring, so I think she will be revealed to be engaged at the ball as well.
Also, I just would like to make an apology to Fran, What a Fran podcast, because I incorrectly stated that everyone would have a happy ever after in season 4.
Well, eventually.
One day.
Not for John, but yeah.
Not quite yet, Fran. Sorry about that. Maybe she's not at the ball today. So that's all of the trailer moments kind of wrangled into order. There's a few extra moments that who knows where they're from,
right?
But expect them at some point. So there's the shot, of course, at Lady Danbury calling on the Mondriches. You can tell that it's her carriage. So maybe that's where she comes to escort Alice back to the palace, because as we saw in the teaser trailer, it looks like Alice gives in and becomes a lady in waiting.
Right.
You can see her being dressed for the occasion. Who knows when this will take place? It might take place over a few episodes, but it seems like that'll be the resolution of that storyline. I hope you have a great time. Other little moments, of course, we had the happy Vicus moments, rolling around in bed together, and then, oh my God, the little hug that they have in Bridgerton House. Not sure when those take place. Assume they take place before John dies, so episode 5 or early episode 6 looking likely.
Editor's note, additional random plot points to cover for the next 4 episodes. Things end happily for Vicus, despite Obs's fears, because they're also spotted together at the Queen's Ball and they look quite happy. And also, footmate Han may end up together, because in a recent interview, Ollie Higginson said this about Footman John's journey in part 2. Without giving too much away, he has his eye on someone, but he's beginning to think about the next stage of his romantic life, which I'm very much looking forward to. That's it.
So, lovely listeners, who knows how much of that will be right? That's just our best attempt at wrangling all the bits of the trailers and stills into order. Of course, the episodes will have way more going on in them, but hopefully that's at least put some of the scenes into a little bit more context or giving you a couple of details to keep an eye out for. With Bridgerton, it's always worth checking what people are wearing and checking who's in the background.
Yes.
Because a happy Benophie were just dancing in the background there, just like a happily, well, I don't think they were happily married Polin. Polin were just fully out in their wedding gear in the season 3 trailer. So lots to look forward to. Lecky part 1, no, Lecky part 2 is in a week, babe. I don't know when we're going to release this episode, but for us, it's just over a week.
I'm frantically going to try to edit, even though I'm sick. So we'll see how it goes.
How are you feeling? Are you excited? I'm looking forward to this one.
I am very excited.
Yeah.
Very much seated for the resolution of Benophie's love story and very excited to potentially see more Polin, or at least more Colin from what we see in the trailer.
Do you think we will get a hint about season 5?
Just Brendel said that we wouldn't. I would love if she was lying and we had like a really dramatic cliffhanger or like hint about who the next season was going to be. I'm pretty sure it's Elle, but I would like to know.
Please.
Wouldn't everybody like to know?
Thank you very much. And Lecky, one last question I have for you before you go. What's our strategy? What are we doing, babe?
I was thinking about this the other night. I don't know.
I've had a lot of bravado for the past 2 years, being like, I'm just going to skip straight to the ending. And now it's like in a week, I'm like, do I want to skip straight to the ending? Listeners, what will happen is Lecky and I the others will catch up. Obviously, Veg will be at work and Beans will be here, there and everywhere. So we will make sure that when the show is released, it'll be 8 o'clock in the morning for me. It'll be midnight for you.
Right.
And we have our little chat where we watch them together and frantically type to each other at the same time. It's actually a lot of fun. I love watching stuff that way with you.
It is actually a lot of fun. That's why I'm thinking I might have to take another day off.
I think part 2's worth it to take a day off for, because you'd be crying constantly. It's like the story of when Iron Man died in Endgame and I spent hours crying across Belgium inconsolably. Do you remember?
You cried about Iron Man dying?
Yeah, I've told you this, babe.
I don't remember that. That's really sweet. I was really into the Marvel movies as well.
This is when I was living in Belgium.
Right.
And the nearest cinema was miles and miles. Well, it was in Brussels. We didn't live in Brussels. We lived near France, whereas Brussels is like further in the middle. So I didn't take a day off work. I got a late night train to Brussels from where I lived, which was a few hours. And then I watched a midnight screening that was English, but it had Flemish and French subtitles. So like half the screen were taken up with subtitles.
Jeez.
And it finished at 3. And I thought that Belgium would be awake at 3, like Brussels would be awake at 3, and nothing was open. So I walked the streets not knowing what to do because I was so scared. But basically what happened is Iron Man died. I wasn't expecting him to die. I thought Captain America was going to die. And I have never cried so much in my whole life. I cried for about 13 hours. And when I say I cried, I mean, what happened was I ended up going to the train station and the train to where I lived wasn't available. So I just got on a train to Antwerp, which is nowhere near where I lived. And the whole way there, it was like a 5 a.m. train. I just couldn't stop crying. And I was just this really strange wouldn't think of me as a crier necessarily, but like,
yeah,
I just couldn't stop crying. I had to keep changing train stations because of the way I was going. And I was just crying in these empty train stations all over Belgium, like just tears pouring down my face. And then I got back to where I was supposed to be at like 10 in the morning and then had to do a full shift and couldn't stop crying.
Yeah.
I actually think I will cry a lot with John.
I was just thinking like maybe I won't because I know it's coming.
No, get
but
out
at the
of
same
here,
time,
Lecky.
I was watching.
Stop it. Are you joking me?
I was watching Top Chef with my husband just before this, and they were doing the judging, and this woman was talking about, she's this contestant from Thailand, and she was talking about how like she made her mother and grandmother's recipe and she wanted to dedicate it to them because like she was one of the top 3, and I started crying at that. So it doesn't look good for me.
Sometimes you just start crying telling us stories of things that's made you cry.
Well, I mean, like if something really hits you in the emotion of it, like I feel it, you know, when you're speaking, if you feel the emotions you're talking about.
I think if it was like manipulative, you probably wouldn't cry. But if it was like a genuine...
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think I'll need the day off.
No.
I think you're going to cry. So, Lecky, what are we going to do? Are we going to... Because my big bravado thing has been, I'm just going to skip straight to the end of episode 8 because I want to know who's season 5. But they sounds like they haven't hinted it. And I don't know if I want to... I don't know. What are we doing?
Are they lying is what I want to know. I don't know.
Well... Listeners, if you think Lecky won't cry at John's death, I will eat my hat. I will retire if you don't cry.
I do have a big box of, actually I have like, my husband got like a 6-pack of these.
She's holding up a box of tissues.
Because I'm ill at the moment. So I'm all set.
Do you know who else is feeling a little ill at the moment? Got a little headache.
Oh.
Well, on that cheerful note, we wish you the most wondrous, happiest, slightly maybe tragically and very morose part 2.
Mm-hmm.
We will of course bring a part 2 reaction to you when it all happens. Probably the best place to keep up to date with us before our episodes though will be Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have sort of very quick initial reactions over there.
Right.
And until then, where can everyone find us?
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at WhatABarbPod. You can also find us on YouTube if you prefer watching your podcasts with visual like context clues and details and collages, which I'm assuming I will have a lot of for this episode.
Yes.
And you can also listen to us on all podcast platforms.
And you can also find us over on Patreon at patreon.com/whatabarbpod. Beans, I have no idea what she's got planned for us, Lecky. Have you got any ideas?
All I know is she has something special planned, and I think it's her part 2 predictions.
Beans, do us the honour, my love,
Give us your predictions.
and sing us out.
It's Beans. Here are my predictions. First prediction is thus. I think that Sophie is going to turn down Benedict's proposal to be his lover. Then she's going to go to the bar with her friends and they're going to dance to some kind of cover of an orchestral something or another. Maybe something about being a boss bitch. I don't know. Number 2, Hazel and John, they're going to kiss. They're going to kiss and they're going to get married. And then Benedict will have a really long conversation with Anthony and then maybe also Colin. Or what'll happen is Colin will have a conversation with Gregory and Benedict will overhear Colin talking to Gregory about having a crush. And then Benedict will be like, oh, damn, that's how I feel, blah, blah, blah. And then like repeat those words to Sophie. Oh, another thing that'll happen is Sophie will like come into his drawing room or desk or something and see all of the paintings that he's made of her. And she'll be like, oh my God. And then she'll run up to him and they'll make out. And then he'll be like, so you accept my proposal? I don't know why he turned into a Transylvanian count. And she'll be like, oh yes, I shall take your proposal. Also a Transylvanian count, I don't know. Anyway, so then they'll be making out, kissing, whatever. Violet's gonna get schmoozy boozy and be like, oh, with her man. She's gonna get schmoozy boozy with her man. They're gonna make love a lot of times. What else is gonna happen? Oh, she's gonna be like, Sophie, you seem of a regal blood. Let's figure out who you are. Don't know why everybody in this version of Bridgerton is a vampire. That's how it is. So then she's going to figure out that Miss Sophie's stepmother is actually a step witch. Okay. And they're going to rip a guitar off the wall. And Sophie's going to be like, oh, it's my father's words. And then she's going to be like, I'm the heir of this fortune. And then we're going to go to like an episode of Family Feud, okay? An episode of Family Feud, Bridgerton style. And they're going to duke it out. No, not Family Feud, WNBA, women's wrestling. Or did I say WNBA, as in women's basketball? We could also do that. A basketball league between Sophie and, what are they, the Penwoods? Anyway, she fights the Penwoods to the death, except Posey. Posey gets saved. Posey gets married to a very hot lady. And she's like, I never believed I could have such happiness. And then her and Sophie are like, we're actually really blood related and we're sisters. Yay. And then Benedict and Sophie are like, okay, we're going to be betrothed. And then Penelope and Colin. Colin has some moments with Benedict and then he eats cheese and then he eats some biscuits. And then him and Penelope have a moment together, several moments together where Penelope's like, I don't want to be a lady whistle down anymore because it's been tiring. All I want to do is think of me and my family. And then she will... And then she will, what was I going to say? Oh, she's going to be like, okay, this is my last thing. Wow. Cressida's going to come in. They're going to do a repeat. Cressida's going to be like, well, if you don't want to do it anymore, I'm going to do it. And Penelope's going to be like, no fucking way, bitch. It's my column. And then she's like, well, I thought I wanted to get away from it, but I'm going to hand it down to my most ardent supporter, Hyacinth. And Hyacinth's going to become Lady Whistledown, but nobody's going to know. It's going to be a secret thing. What else? Somewhere at the end, I was going to see all these people get married and being happy and all this other shit. And she's gonna be like, I can't stay here anymore. And she's gonna run away. She's gonna run away. You know who's gonna be there as she's running away? Like running on his horse is gonna be Sir Philip with his latest and greatest flower that he's found. Those are my predictions for part 2.
That's the violin.
A Polin podcast.